stage. Thomas and Matthew dissect every page. Lies unravel like threads in the night. Watch as the truth comes and takes flight. In the spotlight, Candace takes a stage. Thomas and Matthew dissect every page. Lies unravel like threads in the night. Watch as the truth comes and takes flight. In interviews she stumbles, can't hold her ground. We analyze her chaos, it's the truth profound. Get up, girl, your lies won't last. Truth comes out, leaving shadows cast. With every twist and turn, the fake cracks show. Thomas and Matthew laying down the flow. Walls and Harris figures in the game, but every word she spins is just a shame. A fabric of untruths, it begins to fray. With every slip and fall, she leads us astray. We critique the narrative as it swirls and bends. Her rhetoric crumbles where the logic ends. Get up, girl, your lies won't last. Truth comes out, leaving shadows cast. With every twist and turn, the fake cracks show. Thomas and Matthew laying down the flow. We critique the narrative as it swirls and bends. Her rhetoric crumbles where the logic ends. Get up, girl, your lies won't last. Truth comes out, leaving shadows cast. With every twist and turn, the fake cracks show. Thomas and Matthew laying down the flow. In the world of lies, the truth will reign. Get up, girl, we're breaking your chain. Get up, girl, we're breaking your chain.
Okay, hey everybody, so you just heard the Acid Crunk theme for this week. Welcome to episode 24 of Gish Gallop Girl. As always, we recommend our favorite coffee, Pillars of Valor, and I'll be linking them in the show notes. Still an unpaid plug,
Yep.
as it turns out, yep. I am Thomas Anderson, and with me on Gish Gallop Girl is...
Matthew Anderson.
Yep.
Yep.
So, I hope to one day have a discount code. We'll see what happens, right?
Yep.
But until then, please consider their coffee for your caffeine addiction. Anyway, on with the show. We're starting with the reading from Chapter 7 of Blackout. This chapter is called On Media, and it's about 20 pages long, and there are 12 reference notes in the back. I think it's worth noting that Candace has a real ladywood for hating on the establishment media, and I think she always has, but it's really on display here. I'm going to read from the first few pages up to the first break in the chapter, and then we can discuss the finer points before we move on to our breakdown of shows over the last 2 weeks. Anyway, let me just pull that up. Okay, so it starts with, Amy Robach's face was twisted in disgust, her voice thick with frustration. The words tumbled out of the ABC News anchor's mouth, one damning revelation after another, all caught on a hot mic. I've had this story for 3 years, she said. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. Robach was, of course, speaking about the damning evidence she had gathered about billionaire financier and suspected pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And without knowing she was being recorded, Robach spoke candidly about the ways that she believed her employer, ABC, had stonewalled her story and opted to protect a potential criminal and his allies, instead of the young girls he had already harmed and those who could become victims in the future. Years later, Epstein's arrest and the awakening of the general public to his monstrous behavior, or years later, after Epstein's arrest and the awakening of the general public to his monstrous behavior, Robach remarked that she was freaking pissed that she had been forced to keep quiet. As the video of Robach began circulating on the internet, there were questions about who leaked the tape, what would happen now that the rants against her employer had gone viral, and how ABC planned to respond. But most pressing was this. Why would a mainstream media outlet like ABC, which claims to report the news, allegedly work to keep the news hidden? What is most remarkable about Jeffrey Epstein's billion-dollar pedophilia ring is not the elaborate measures he took to recruit girls and whisk them off to his private island on his private jet. It is the men who accompanied him, including some of the Democrat Party's most prominent leaders. Among the high-profile names on Epstein's flight log, Larry Summers, Secretary of the U.S. Treasury during the Clinton administration, and Director of the National Economic Council under Obama, and former President Bill Clinton. What is more, Clinton is shown to have taken at least 26 trips aboard the so-called Lolita Express. According to Robach, she knew all of this. In her accidental testimony, she even declared that she had uncovered considerable dirt on the former president, Clinton, but again, she was prevented from revealing it on the air. She alleges that her superiors told her that no one cared about the Epstein scandal. If this is true, ABC is guilty of something far worse than simply prioritizing airtime. The network acted as a cover for its wealthy liberal allies, guarding the immorality of some of the prominent members of the Democrat Party in order to maintain the allegiance of its millions of voters, including a 90% black voting margin. We know this is not the first time an allegedly unbiased news organization has been revealed to be little more than a propaganda machine. In his book, Catch and Kill, New Yorker columnist Ronan Farrow revealed that while working at NBC News, his bosses refused to air his early reporting on the sexual assault allegations against Harvey Weinstein. Farrow also alleged that NBC buried allegations of sexual assault and harassment that had been levied against former Today Show anchor Matt Lauer. Quote, "In recent weeks, NBC has made a loud and clear statement about its values," end quote, wrote Washington Post media columnist Margaret Sullivan on November 5th, 2019. "Profits matter more than journalism, ratings more than truth," she said. Sullivan is correct, and I'd offer that the state of our media is worse than she purports, for it is not just profits and ratings that liberal media organizations are after, it is control. By selecting what information is disseminated to the public and intentionally concealing what may expose competing narratives, media organizations directly influence public perception on a variety of topics, from foreign wars to healthcare crises and, of course, to race and politics. Even as print journalists and TV anchors subvert the presumed impartialities of their industry, they continue to hurl reckless insults and allegations toward President Trump. The result is a propaganda-driven media landscape that works to intensify the black allegiance to the Democrat Party by hiding the truth about its leaders and its motives. That's where we're going to stop. The next section is titled The Liberal Media's Love Affair with the Democrat Party. So that will be on our next recording.
That was a short chapter.
Well, not a chapter.
Oh.
I went to the chapter break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which she has so many, thankfully, not thankfully, because I'd really rather be done with this fucking book.
Yeah.
But we have only a compact amount of time.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little easier when I'm coming up with the episodes. So, now, it's been a few years since this book was printed, and some things have come out in that time, so I won't drag on Candace for what I concur is well-deserved rage. Epstein should have gone to prison around 2008, and we've talked about that before. But what has come out since this book was published is that Trump was on the Lolita Express 7 times.
Yeah.
None of those trips were to Epstein's private island, but Epstein was on the plane each time. He absolutely was on a first-name basis with Trump, as he was with Bill Clinton and Stephen Hawking and several others. The Hawking one would be weird, but Epstein liked having smart people around him and at his parties and events, so it kind of fits with the crowd he was trying to attract and the people he was selling himself to in that world. I forgot to mention it in here, but Bill Gates was also a buddy of Epstein. Yeah, because fuck him. Yeah, so the extent of his crimes is still unraveling, and accusers have come forward over the last few years regarding Trump and Epstein raping them. At the time before Trump getting into power, the stories were suppressed or court cases were dropped, according to the women fearing for their safety. But I agree with Candace in that the stories should never have been suppressed, Trump or not. Every name of every bastard involved should be publicly known, period. That said, 19 women have come forward to say that Trump has raped them. It's all just part of his long, drawn-out, constant legal battles, all of which seems to have merit. I feel like if he loses this upcoming election, he will be faced with more lawsuits regarding not just past accusers of his many crimes feeling finally emboldened, but also people he has screwed over during this election cycle. I expect to some extent that his sons and Melania may also be dragged down. Man can hope, right? Anyway, on to this week's first episode, unless you have anything to add.
I mean, yeah. People that are probably going to tack on to lawsuits is probably going to be the, what, was it the town or the city of Arizona?
Which one?
The one where he had everybody carted out in the buses out to his rally.
Oh my God, yeah.
And
No, it was in California. It was at Coachella.
Yeah.
Yeah, Coachella, yeah. Yeah, that was especially disturbing. He had a bunch of people. The theory was that because people had been videoed leaving in droves from his rallies, that they were going to hold a rally someplace where people couldn't just leave.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? Well, you have them park in a parking lot and then you bus all the bastards.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was they didn't pay the bus company.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't doing it for free. That takes time, and the driver's got to get paid, and you got to put fuel in the fucking vehicles.
You've got to reset all of that day, maybe even that week's, bus routes because
20 buses.
Yeah.
20 chartered buses. So imagine being on one of these buses, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I'm going to go to the Trump rally. I'm with a bunch of other maggots. We're all going to be. This is going to be great. We're going to go hear the man speak. Then you get out there. He rambles, he blathers, you can't leave.
Yeah.
And then, you start waiting for the buses to come back, and none do. Mm-hmm. And some of the stories were that there were 3 buses, and it went down to 1 because the crowd assaulted a couple of the drivers who wouldn't let people on because they were still waiting to leave.
Yeah.
They weren't coming back. They were going.
Yeah.
But, they weren't coming back for anybody. They weren't taking anyone with them. They were... they were under orders, and so the crowd assaulted a couple of the drivers, and I don't know how it all panned out, but they got rid of them, and then they fucking wound up, of course not coming back, and people were all up on Truth Social and Twitter and shit, and trying to get a hold of anybody who could come out and get them, and I think they were out there for something like 7 or 8 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a total shit show of a thing the whole way round.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened.
Like I said, I think it was either the town or the city that was nearest had to pay the bus company for the full fare.
Yeah, $250,000.
Yeah.
And the thing is that they had planned the rally months ago, and they had been telling the Trump team hey, you need to pay the bill.
Yeah.
You need to pay the bill, and they weren't paying the bill. Because this is a constant problem with him.
Yeah.
And, you would think that his campaign, which has fucking hundreds of millions of dollars, could afford that $250,000.
Yeah.
Or maybe one of his sons, such as Donald Trump Jr., who got $2 billion from the Saudis a few years ago.
Yeah.
This is someone who has enough money to just write a check.
Mm-hmm.
To write a check and even, maybe tip the fucking drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, ugh. Fucking garbage. Oh, and something happened earlier today on Reddit. Some guy posted up a video of Dave Smith. You remember Dave Smith? The guy who was David Duke wasn't a bad guy. Candace had a whole ass interview with him.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Dave Smith, someone posted up a video of him on... one of the economic collapse things or something I follow on Reddit. Anyway, and so someone posted up a video of him saying all this bullshit about the Federal Reserve and stuff. It's maybe 3 to 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And when I realized it was Dave Smith, I wasn't watching it with the sound on at first. I just had the captions going, and I was like, this sounds a lot like. I was like, is this? And I pulled up the audio, and as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, motherfucker. So I tapped out that, I typed out that that he was an inveterate liar, not to be believed, and this guy comes back to me. The original poster comes back to me with like, well, do you have proof? And I was like, yeah. And I fucking linked our episode.
Yeah.
Which was episode 16. I thought it was 14 at first. Turns out it was 16, so I corrected that. But I was like, yeah. In fact, here's an entire episode. And the guy comes back with, oh, it's 3 hours. Can you just tell me where the part is where he talked about David Duke? And I was like, I went through several responses that I typed out and then I deleted. I first started with, fuck off, no.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, no, wait. I should be a little calmer about this. So I waited like a couple hours later and I finally typed out a response to him. And I was like, no. Like, I spent my time researching, typing, recording. No. You can be an adult and go through it yourself or something to that effect.
Yeah.
It's like, I am not doing your homework for you. And I haven't gotten a response back, and that was several hours ago. So, I don't know. Maybe he listened.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he listened to it. I have no fucking idea. But there was someone else I'd gotten into a conversation with in that same thread, and he was much more like evenly grounded.
Yeah.
He was asking me about the Kamala family shit that fucking Candace has been going through, and like, what do you think of this? And I was like, I think it's all bullshit. And I told him about episode 23 that we did last 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's incredibly difficult to get those records in Jamaica. And I was like, I'm not going to lay it all out for you, but I laid it all out in our show, and it's about an hour in if you want to go, listen to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anything was going to come of that, but if you're either one of those guys, I'm not apologizing for anything I said.
Well, I mean, if it's either one of those guys and they're now listening this far in,
well, if they're listening to this, they're not patrons unless they are.
Well, true.
I don't think they're one of our patrons. I mean, they could be. Maybe they listen to the episode and they're like, yeah, this is worth $1 a month.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case. I mean, I don't fucking know. If they are, though, good for you. You got in early because this part isn't going to be up until Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, now, before we get into this one, this is from the Candace Show, episode 80. Interview with Ashton Forbes about Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. Before we get into this one, I want to mention for posterity that this is supposed to be a major election going on right now as we get closer to November 5th, 2024, in 13 days from the time of this recording. So, by the time we do our next recording, we should know who the 47th President of the United States is going to be.
Yeah.
I'm on such pins and needles.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, trust me, it's tense in the work environment too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
What really weirds me out?
Yeah.
Is the amount of equal amounts of weed smokers and I'll just call them ingesters.
Yeah. Fair.
That have come in with like a fucking Trump hat.
Yeah. Why don't we just call them consumers?
Consumers.
They are consuming it.
Yeah.
One way or another. Yep.
And just seeing them come in and just looking at them and going, sir, or ma'am,
Yeah.
you do realize where you're currently at, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I'm just here to get my usual supply. Remove the hat.
And it's funny too because your boss over there is a veteran.
Yeah.
He's not about any of that shit.
No.
Dude wants to make money on weed.
Yeah.
Legally. God. Yeah, that's all I got for that. So, Trump is battling Kamala Harris, and his supporters are all riled up and shit. And Candace chose this time to go on vacation for a week.
Oh.
During
Convenient.
during her absence, she posted up 4 interviews for that week. 2 filled me with rage. 1 is utterly batshit, and the final one is Candace having a discussion with a very Q-pilled Scotsman. Yeah.
Does he at least have a Scottish accent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. That'll make it funny at least when listening.
Oh, we're not, but we'll get there.
Oh.
So it was a week. It was a week, but only 4 days long. I'll let Candace start this off on her own way, though.
Where to begin? Okay, well, I do not trust the government at all. Shocker, I'm Candace Owens. But how did I arrive at that conclusion that the government was lying to us about virtually everything? Well, it usually starts with just one thing. For me, it was vaccines. It was becoming vaccine injured and then becoming vaccine obsessed to understand how I had allowed a foreign substance into my body and knew nothing about that foreign substance and yet trusted the experts. And then, I came out of the other side realizing that virtually every vaccine, the story that we are told, this is really just a program of social engineering. They scare us into compliance, they lie about various things, and they omit a ton of information. And so then after that, I would say all things became plausible. Now I listen to people who I once upon a time would have found to be very strange. Oh, that person's a conspiracy theorist, I would have said. And now I know who came up with that term, conspiracy theorist, the government.
No.
The CIA did.
No.
After JFK was shot by just one person, just a random act of violence against a president. And then they paid, via Operation Mockingbird, a bunch of journalists to lie about the narrative, to control the narrative.
No and no.
Yeah, so I have a lot of things I ask questions about, and I tend to try to find people who get equally as obsessed with a topic and present interesting theories.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure you remember this event. Let's go back to 2014.
Interesting is carrying
There
a
was
lot of
an
weight.
airline carrier, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, MH370, which went missing. And then it was in the news, and then magically it was not in the news, and we never really got an answer to what happened to MH370. Well, the person I'm inviting on the show today has quite the theory. Some people might think that that theory is completely kooky.
It is.
I don't. Not at all. And I'm going to allow him to explain it to you. Ashton Forbes, welcome to Candace.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the tone of this show.
She didn't even do the weird ass cold open music, or did you skip the?
No, I didn't skip shit.
Oh, she didn't.
She didn't do it on any of her interviews this week. No.
What's the point in having a weird ass opening song if you're not going to
Here's the
utilize
thing.
it every single episode?
Here's the thing. She recorded all of these interviews weeks or months ago. It's unclear.
Okay, fair enough.
Over on Knowledge Fight, this would have been known as a Wacky Wednesday episode. But here, it's just another day. Another interview with another asshole. She should have put this one up on Tuesday so that I could quote Raul Julia from Street Fighter. Anyway, let's talk about this dude for a bit. Ashton Forbes is a known free energy scammer. He uses a significant amount of the time of this interview to talk circles around Candace and basically act as a pitchman for his free energy scam. He weaves it into the tale of MH370 in a way that makes actual experts in the field furious. He has one, count it, one, solid theory he presents about the flight and why it went down. Everything else is pure batshit. I will, of course, be playing some of it. I just wanted to establish his lack of bona fides going in.
Candace Owens, I'm happy to be here. I'm super excited for this interview.
All right, so I was just on X, scrolling through posts, looking for different topics.
Twitter.
And I came across a very long post that you did, and it was about MH370. And then in the back of my mind, I went, oh my gosh, what actually did happen to MH370?
It went down.
So if you can just remind people, because they're probably also equally as dusty on this narrative,
You're not
what
prepared for
happened
this.
on that day? It's March 8th, 2014. How many passengers get on this plane that was supposed to be traveling from the Kuala Lumpur airport to Beijing in China?
Yeah, there was 239 people. And I just want to first say that those people have families, and I have the utmost respect for those families. In fact, I first started this investigation because those families deserve the truth. And I think that anybody that would say, oh, you're hurting the families by looking into this, they should listen and look at how the families responded after that plane disappeared. Those families went on major news stations, and they knew something was wrong with this plane and with this story. They knew they weren't being told all the information that was out there. So this plane took off around 1642 UTC from Kuala Lumpur, and it goes dark over the South China Sea about 40 minutes later. The last communication that we were given publicly was just a mundane communication, good night, Malaysian Airlines 370. Now, this is where the mystery really began, because for several days, that was all we knew. This plane went dark somewhere over the South China Sea. Nobody really has any idea. And you can start to see, going back to your comment about conspiracies, that right away something wasn't right. It seemed like there might be a cover-up at play, because several days later they said, oh no, this plane actually didn't crash anywhere near the South China Sea or anything. It turned back over Malaysia, flew over the peninsula of Malaysia, and it flew directly to Penang Airport. And then it deviates again, and they end up losing it on military radar. And then it takes a few days, and around March 13th, 5 days after this plane disappears, unnamed U.S. intelligence sources float to the media that this plane potentially went into the South Indian Ocean, which is really convenient. That's like saying, oh, it just fell down a well somewhere, and we're never going to probably be able to find it. It went to the worst possible location. Now, it wasn't until about 2.5 months later that finally they released these Inmarsat pings that say this is what the U.S. intelligence indicates that the plane went to the South Indian Ocean.
Now, just to slow this down for people that don't even know what an Inmarsat ping is, just describe to them what the satellite pings actually are.
So the logic was they have these satellites in geostationary orbit, and they are pinging the airliners all the time. And what was interesting is that this airplane was actually between two different satellites. Should have been pinging both of them. But interestingly enough, it stopped pinging one of them before it took off and never pinged that satellite ever again. Why this is problematic is that we couldn't triangulate the position anymore. If you have multiple pings, you can triangulate the exact position of the plane. So these pings get released, but the company itself and no government officials do any analysis on them. They leave it to bloggers on the internet to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Firstly, I just need to know, is geopinging the actual word?
No.
Good. Because, fuck's sake, that reminded me of that fucking goddamn movie Geostorm, where they were like, it's gonna be a storm so bad, it's gonna be a geostorm. Motherfucker, that means a rock storm.
Okay, yeah, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Geostorm, 2012.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, just unrelated but amazing. NASA said that 2012 is the single worst science movie ever made. Yeah, like it has managed to stick around in spite of all other films.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've gotten to that weird one about the moon yet.
What?
Yeah, see, that's how inconsequential it was. Came out a couple years ago. The Core is like number 2 on that list. Did you ever see The Core?
I don't think I ever saw The Core. No.
Yeah, because I'm your father and I love you. The Core was about the core of the Earth slowing down and everything fucking up, and these scientists go to the core of the Earth to restart it.
Oh, I think I did see that. It's called a Futurama episode. That
No.
was so much better.
Probably
it had
because they
do
managed
with
to wrap it
cats
up
in Egypt.
Probably because they managed to wrap it up in 22 minutes.
Actually, I think it was a 2-parter.
Oh, God. Okay.
It was the one with
Honestly,
the alien cats that came to Earth.
Still, anything Bender said was smarter than everything in the Core. I sat through it because I was like, this looks dumb enough to be good, and I was wrong.
Oh, it's just straight dumb.
Idiocracy was smarter on so many levels. Yeah,
there was one that I watched that was the entire world basically went into a massive ice age.
that's 2012.
Oh, is that 2012?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No. You're thinking of The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah, Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah, no, 2012 sucks for other reasons. Yeah, Yeah, no,
Oh, right,
2012.
because that's when the quote unquote the Aztecs said that the world was
Yes.
going to end because they ran out of fucking stone to carve on.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, no, 2012, The Core, and some other film were like on NASA's like most hated list. But I think The Martian made it to the top, as well as like Gravity, and there was another one.
Okay, The Martian was actually pretty
Yeah.
decent, though.
Well, it's because Andy Weir, who wrote it,
Yeah.
actually spent time talking to NASA.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fair.
There was very, very little in that movie that was actually like undoable or questionable.
Yeah.
Movie, book, whatever. It was a book and then it was a movie. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like I was saying though, Geostorm 2012 and I think The Day After Tomorrow
Yeah.
are all done by Roland Emmerich, who was half of the creative team behind Independence Day.
Okay, so it took the other half to make a good sci-fi.
Yeah, I think
Got it.
we can count on Toby Emmerich, his brother, to be the brains in the operation. I'm not sure if Toby Emmerich died or retired or just has nothing to do with him.
I gotta give the Emmerich that made the other ones.
Yeah,
Great CGI work.
yeah.
Fucking spectacular.
Oh yeah, Independence Day holds up.
Oh yeah. But
I even liked the sequel, and I didn't think I would. I liked the sequel.
but when she.
Uh-huh.
The thing that made me put my hand up and go pause for a moment because
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a long one.
Yeah,
The fact that he's going on
Yeah.
about the thing. Then she goes, okay, if we could just like slow it down for just a moment. Could you please explain?
Emerson.
I didn't even
Yeah,
fucking
here-
understand
here's-
what the fuck she said.
well, here's the thing about this interview.
Yeah.
I have cut so much out of it. It was 2.5 hours.
Fuck.
And as I listened to it, I was like, no, I can go without so much. As it is, it kind of dominates the list of clips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But, yeah, so he almost sounded smart there, didn't he?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remembered it was Candace Owens' interview because she said something.
Well, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. But listeners to this show likely picked up on it before I ended the clip. The governments involved did not just release the information on the pings made to the internet without extensively going over them first with their own analysts and data methods. The reason he and other people even have the data is because the government of Malaysia released them due to public demand, and also hoping that maybe knowledgeable people could assist in helping bring the search to a close. Anyway, he goes on to claim that he is smarter than all the other people that are actual experts. After making himself sound like he knows what he's talking about, he talks about the various theories, such as pilot suicide, that have been discussed but not proven. He goes on to claim that Rolls-Royce, who made the engines, they did, had reams of data they never released to the investigators. But the fact is, the investigators haven't found a reason to ask for it, based on the fact that it would have only fed information about a few things they already knew about the plane regarding its positioning. Releasing the data in that way could actually jeopardize future flights with those engines if malactors were able to suss out operational details from the data release.
Yeah.
You know? In short, it's a nobody wins scenario. He goes on to say that world governments have underwater microphones that could have been used to detect the crash of the plane into the ocean, which is true.
Yeah.
And they were used. 1. Detected a weak signal along the arc where it is thought to have crashed. These things aren't perfect, but he goes on to make a bullshit comparison anyway while talking about it.
Of course.
There's more than that. We also have something called SOSUS, the Sound Surveillance System, which is a Navy system that's been around since like the 40s or 50s. This is the one that heard that Titan sub pop that was near the
submersible,
Titanic.
yeah.
That was a big giveaway because what happened? All the news stations had these oxygen counters going down. They've got 48 hours of oxygen left or whatever. The Navy knew that sub imploded for 5 days, and they never said anything. And then after it turned out that we found out that it imploded, they came out and admitted, yes, it imploded. And the thing that was really kind of revealing to me is how quickly the Navy went down and found the parts. Like, they had triangulated the exact location of that sub. That's a tiny little submersible. So if they could detect that, how could they not detect a Boeing 777 crashing into the ocean.
Because they already knew where to look, dumbass.
Yeah, it was the Titanic tour sub.
Yeah.
I wonder where the fuck it could possibly be around.
Well, it was a submersible
Yeah,
released from a boat
yeah.
above the known location of the Titanic.
So
The act-
it's got to be somewhere in the area.
Yeah. The actual story here is that the Navy detected a sound like an implosion in the general area, and they did tell the Coast Guard, who passed it on to the families before they told the media. But protocol says that they had to continue the search because search and rescue operations generally continue until proof of life or death is known. It was a tiny pop, sure, but they already knew where to look. The plane in this case crashed in a very wide area, or so it is thought, based on debris that is washed up. It doesn't compare to the death sub in any meaningful way. He goes on to claim across several minutes that military exercises were going on at the time in the region of the supposed crash, but after extensively searching, I was unable to corroborate this, aside from finding it on several conspiracy blogs that feed back to his bullshit. Candace adds on with all the theories that came out about the nature of the flight and the crash, such as the pilot being suicidal, which most experts have tossed away as well. After that, we get this gem.
When I look back on it now, I'm like, wow, it just follows that standard pattern of a classic military intelligence.
Not that one.
When
Sorry.
I look back on it now, I'm like, wow,
Wait, what?
When I look back on it now, I'm like,
Oh.
wow, it just follows that standard pattern
I was on
of
the right one.
a
My bad.
classic military intelligence operation cover-up. And I want to allow people right now to watch these two videos that I'm going to show them. These videos, actually, first we're going to watch the video that's not thermal, which was, how many years later did it come into the public sphere?
Yeah, so the satellite video was the first video to get published. The satellite video was published May 19th, 2014. So this is 70 days after the plane disappears. But in the description of the video, and this was from a Regicide Anon YouTube account, that was the name of the YouTuber, Regicide Anon, some obscure YouTube account with 12 followers or something like that. This video actually in the description says, received March 12th, 2014. That's 4 days after the plane disappeared. It says source, protected. And this was a YouTube account that was somehow associated with the UFO phenomenon. We've seen their other videos they have on there. Anything remotely similar to this. So we don't know exactly what their source was. When we dug through it, it seems like there might have been like a forum that's like Spanish-based, that maybe somehow these videos got on there and people started posting them. Because this was just the first person to post them. Other people ended up posting them later on. So this right away starts to build this time frame for, okay, you've got a very small window of opportunity to make this video. And when people look at this satellite video, a lot of people, first of all, can't even tell what direction you're looking. People go, well, where's outer space? And you're going, no, you're looking down. You're not looking up. Well, so it goes to show this is why the United States government protects surveillance capabilities so well. Because if we find out about our surveillance capabilities, then we can feed through some of that disinformation and we can figure out, oh, wait, no, we absolutely must know about a plane disappearing, and you can apply it to other world events that go on as well. And so it makes it much harder for them to misinform the public that's out there. But again, the strongest evidence on the satellite video is the coordinates. It's got these coordinates in the bottom left. And Newsweek actually published a fake debunk 2 days after these videos got popular on August 9th, 2023. These videos got popular on August 7th of last year in 2023. 2 days later, Newsweek all of a sudden posts this debunk. And it's just a copy and paste, like an AI took it from another article that was out there. The only factual claim in there was that in those coordinates it said NROL 33, which is a National Reconnaissance Office launch of satellites. The problem was that the NROL 33 was launched in like 2015 or late 2014, so after the videos were out there. So they said, oh, it must be fake. But if you just look at the coordinates, you can realize it doesn't say NROL 33. It says NROL 22. NROL 22 is USA 184. This satellite was launched in 2006. And it was the first satellite launch of the SBIRS system, space-based infrared system, that was out there. To me, that's quite the coincidence for someone to put that down there. It turns out, on these constellations of satellites, they use relay satellites because not all satellites are within range of the ground-based systems that they need. And NRL-22, USA 184, has a millennia orbit, so it takes this oblong orbit, which seems like I think they call them mid-Earth orbit satellites. It's a good candidate to be a relay satellite because it spends a lot of its time above the North Pole, which is it's in angle of view of many other satellites that are out there. And the coordinates, initially we weren't sure. Like you, I only woke up, in the last, let's say, 4 to 8 years. I was someone who I call CNN brain type person who just believed whatever the TV told you. And so I thought, well, this plane must have crashed in the South Indian Ocean because that's what all the narratives were down there. So when you looked at the coordinates, if you had added a minus sign in front of the north-south coordinate, it actually put the plane in the South Indian Ocean somewhere. And I thought, okay, even though it was hard to explain why there might be a minus sign just cut off that you couldn't see, I thought this must be what it is. But when we actually graphed the coordinate shifts, because you have this perspective shift on this satellite video, we realized there's no possible way for it to have a minus sign under it, because if you graphed it, either it must be going south into the east or north into the east. And if you're going north into the east, you're turning to the right. If you're going south into the east, you're turning to the left. Well, we have 2 videos that both show a plane turning to its left. That means there's no minus sign, that must be the Nicobar Islands. It's within 100 miles of where a real-life witness saw the plane that she's just been discredited as well. At the same time, that the day the plane was lost, they said that the plane was lost at Subang Air Traffic Control, lost contact with the plane at 1840 UTC. That's the same time the witness saw the plane. That's the same time the plane would have been in this area where this video is filming it. So you look at it, you go, okay, for me, I've already got enough evidence that I need the U.S. government to say something about these videos. But there's more.
Let's show that first video right now.
I had to do so much crap to explain all this, but go ahead.
Okay, I already forgot what I was angry about. Shit.
You might remember it.
Yeah.
There is no truth to the alleged satellite videos of MH370.
Oh, I remember now.
Okay.
The fucking, if you add a minus to the coordinates thing. Reminded me of those 2 magicians that, one's tubby, one's real short.
You thinking of Penn and Teller?
Yeah, Penn and Teller.
Okay.
Their show for revealing magic tricks and
bullshit.
shit. Yeah. One of the things that they had done on there was, you'll notice whenever somebody's really trying to fuck with you on some information, they'll go, here are these symbols, or here's this set of numbers, but if you remove this letter and put this letter here, and remove that letter and put this letter here, then it means this. That's what he just fucking did if you put a minus sign next to it, it matches with the coordinates you're looking for.
If I change the elements in this video, it does what I want it to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these videos are hoaxes, created using visual effects, and have been thoroughly debunked by experts. Here are some of the key points regarding those fake videos. The videos claiming to show satellite footage of MH370 being abducted by UFOs or mysteriously disappearing have been circulating on social media since at least May 2014. They resurfaced recently after being falsely presented as new leaked footage of the missing plane. He claims the videos were sent to him. A lot of other people claim the videos were sent to them.
Yep.
Yeah. Several factors clearly indicate that the videos are fake. The cloud background in the videos is made up of stock footage and 2D images.
Jesus.
A concept artist confirmed that his cloud photos from 2012 were used as the background. There's also an unrealistic satellite perspective. If the video was truly from a satellite, the camera would not remain still as it shows it. Satellites move at extremely high speeds, around 17,000 miles per hour, which would cause visible motion in the footage. There's also an incorrect camera angle. A genuine satellite video would capture objects from above, not from the side angle as seen in the clips. Visual effects experts, including a group called Corridor Crew, have analyzed the footage and confirmed it was created using special effects. Multiple fact-checking organizations and media outlets have investigated the videos and concluded they're fake. The original video was uploaded to YouTube in May 2014 with no mention of MH370, only describing airliner and UFOs. A Reddit user, who is a visual effects artist, provided evidence of how the video was created using stock footage and visual effects. News organizations like France 24 have debunked similar claims about finding MH370 using satellite imagery. And while the viral videos are fake, legitimate satellite data has been crucial in the search for MH370. Inmarsat satellite data was used to estimate possible flight paths in search areas. Researchers have used oceanographic data from satellites and buoys to model potential debris trajectories. Geoscience Australia supported search efforts by conducting extensive marine surveys and seafloor mapping. So in conclusion, the viral videos claiming to show satellite footage of MH370 disappearing or being abducted are entirely fabricated using visual effects. They have no connection to the actual search efforts or legitimate satellite data analysis used in the investigation of the missing flight. But that won't stop Candace from just going along with it.
So this is one of these exercises that I say to people, but the mainstream media and the intelligence agencies are now instructing us not to believe your own eyes. So I know you just saw, and you're going, wait a minute, what just happened? I was following this, and then suddenly it's gone, and so your brain is coming online, and you're going, wasn't I trained by the mainstream media not to believe my own eyes? Somebody will explain to me, oh, this is a fake video, something's wrong with it. And I do also want to show you guys this alongside the thermal image of this happening as well. Where did we get this, the thermal image? Was this created after the fact?
Same account. So same exact account, about 2 weeks. So it actually, on the thermal video, it's the first video is just called Satellite Video, Airliner, and UFOs. It doesn't say anything about MH370, but we dug to the metadata, and there's a tag in the metadata for MH370. The second video says, it's like UAV drone video, and then in the description says alternate angle from previous video. It says received June 5th, 2014, published June 12th, 2014. So this was, 2 to 3 weeks after that first video. And now you start to build like a story in terms of, okay, this first video comes out, and if this is a real video, someone's leaked this, they want people to pick it up. Nobody picks it up. And then all of a sudden, boom, now we've got a second video from a Predator drone from a completely different angle than the first one. And so when people ask, like, what would it take for you to be convinced that something's real? It's like, well, I want 2 different videos from, different angles, from high-quality sources, military sources. And you know what? Put one of them in infrared and the other one in a thermal.
And make sure they line up, the time lines up.
Yeah, line
and
up perfectly. And they in sync. We've dug through it. Can't find any discrepancy, not even in the movement of the orbs or on the plane. Nothing at all out there. And going back real quick to the satellite video, probably the other most compelling piece is you see this cursor, mouse cursor, come off the top right of the screen. Because if this is a real video, that's a recording of someone's computer. Mm-hmm. And they're on a much bigger field of view. So you can tell because this mouse comes off the top of the side of the screen, and they probably just hit start record. And the mouse comes on the screen, and you can actually tell the mouse stays still when the perspective shifts. And people looked at the mouse, and the background of that satellite video is 6 frames per second. It's kind of like slowly jerky a little bit. You kind of tell with your eyes. But the cursor is actually 24 frames per second. And people pieced it together right away that this is consistent with a Citrix session, a remote terminal session. So for people that aren't familiar with working at big companies and potentially the government, a lot of the data is being stored in databases that are remotely hosted. So what you do, you log in to that database, to that server, and you access the data on that computer server. And when you do that, almost everybody I know uses Citrix. So now, if these videos are fake, someone is like knows how our systems are set up out
And they
there,
did it very quickly.
and very, very quickly. Or somebody saw these videos, just like the people watching this right now, and kind of freaked out and went, "Wait, what?" And they were like, "The world has to know because no one's going to figure this out without seeing these videos."
But they're not trying to end up like Edward Snowden, having to learn Russian,
Yes.
because they've revealed some sort of a government secret. So they just put it onto the internet and let the internet do what the internet does.
And I think that to your point about the CIA disinformation stuff as well, they probably didn't even realize how much control the government has over the media. You know, like to Project Mockingbird, for example, I absolutely believe that the government controls the perception of the media strongly. And they probably just thought they would end up being like a hero or something, or that the media would pick up on this. But of course, the government was never going to let that happen. So these videos got no traction anywhere. And most people, even myself in 2014, I remember seeing the drone video. You can tell it's a drone because you can see the drone's nose in the video, and these drones actually have these slots that are customizable on the wings, where you can pull out, you can put a Hellfire missile on there, whatever, you can put a camera on there. We've found the drones that have cameras in that exact location as well, like an MQ-1C Great Eagle is one of those. So they might have thought that the media was going to pick up on this, and then they never did.
Of course, the media's job is to not pick up on that specifically.
And the world had no idea. Like, I looked at that drone video, and I just didn't know what I was looking at in 2014, because I followed this case back then as just, you know, an independent citizen and civilian, and thought, well, that's a weird video. And this was before the DoD Navy released those UFO videos and declassified them.
Never happened.
So before that, I didn't even know we used like forward-looking infrared, FLIR. So I had no idea of even the basis of our technology capabilities from a surveillance perspective. But now in 2023, when I saw those videos again, I went, whoa, I remember seeing this. And for me, it was when I saw that second video, and I went, okay, this is bizarre. And then when I saw the Citrix session evidence, I went, okay, this is like way too much. And I asked the question, instead of everybody else saying, this must be fake, this is stupid, blah, 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 I said, what would it take for this video to be real?
It would take quite a lot, considering it was disproven time and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fucking... I didn't know that we had forward-facing infrared.
Yeah.
This reminds me that these people aren't... They can't possibly be human and can't possibly have ever picked up a controller to play a video game in their goddamn life.
Doesn't seem like it.
Also, saying that we got surveillance from a UAV and from a Predator drone...
Yeah.
They're both technically UAVs for one. One is more used for... A Predator drone is used for attack, usually. And the idea of UAV, when it's referred to, is usually a surveillance device.
Yeah.
Also, they have a 360 fucking camera on the bottom of them that allows them to look around.
Yeah.
And the missiles are attached to the wings. They never put surveillance equipment on the fucking wings. They put fucking missiles on there when they're going to use them for that.
Missiles and bombs.
And the only UAV satellite that exists... Well, not the only UAV satellite that exists, but the UAV satellites are what is used to communicate from the ground to the UAV.
Yeah. Well, you know, hey, why rely on experts, right?
The people at Raytheon would be disappointed.
No, I think a certain number of them would be like, oh, good, they don't know a thing. Yeah. So I realize those clips were both long, but I think you might understand more now why this particular interview ran for about 2.5 hours. And yes, at the end of it, he mentioned the bullshit UFO and alien stuff that came up within the last couple of years. I am not fucking with that today. Ashton will go on to claim that one of the theories regarding what happened with MH370 is that about 500 pounds of lithium-ion batteries caught fire during the flight and took the plane down.
That's believable.
Yeah. The fire supposedly would have fried the nav systems and other things and would have been impossible to put out in the air. To me, this is the most plausible theory. But he goes on to say that his theory instead, based on a technology grift he entirely made up, is that the flight was teleported away to an airbase using a mid-air teleportation system that the U.S. has had in its back pocket for some time. Candace just goes along with it, but it takes them about 40 minutes to get to that point with an ad break in the middle. It's all boring bullshit, where he also claims using a cartoonish sounding video that the plane was warped away. Where? Who knows? But here's more.
Why in the fuck? I thought you were gonna say, like...
So my theory, or I should say really my understanding, is that the government is hiding a lot of secrets from us. I think the government is making us sick. I think the government is making us dumb. And I think the purpose of that is sinister. It's just to enslave the planet. And they do this by pretending that we're progressing. And they give you something like an iPhone, and then you don't realize that kids can't do basic math. Right? So literally, this is what, so they're, and you kind of look back into all of these stories now that I realize, how powerful the government is, and more importantly, how powerful the media is. And I'm talking about Hollywood as a component. Even the kind of stories they tell us when we do get technology is kind of senseless. It's like everyone just sort of invented technology in their garage. Like, what's going on in these garages? That, like, everyone's like, oh, just got together and made Google, got together and made YouTube, and then got together. It's like, and then you look into this and you're going, actually, this looks like quite an elite group of people who are introducing technology that they've already had for quite some time, giving it to the public because there is this illusion that we are progressing. And I actually am convinced that we are regressing. We've been regressing for a very long time. That they are slowing man down. There's a gap that is just being established. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger between the elites and what they know and what we know. And this is why they are obsessed with social causes, because there's nothing but hot air. So let's keep the students focused on CRT. Forget math, forget science, forget things that would allow you to catch up with us. We're going to teach you about race theory. We're going to teach you about the social sciences. We're going to teach you about feminism. All of these things that mean nothing. You don't even know how to grow your food. Yeah. Which is happening right now, right? You talk to women, don't even know how to cook. Forget growing their food. They don't know how to cook. Men don't know how to hunt. I mean, we're talking about a generation of lost knowledge that happened very quickly. What your grandparents knew versus what you know. And you're convinced you're smarter than your grandparents. You couldn't even survive outside. You would die if you had to survive outside. That is the overwhelming majority of people just die instantly. And I have placed it, I think there's been concerted efforts to do these sort of resets in society. And I think that one definitely happened around in the middle of the 19th century, sometime during the 1800s, mid-1800s, they did a huge reset. And there's a lot of stuff that just hasn't been explained. And because I got there before I ever saw your theory, I went, oh yeah, this is right up there. Again, it's the illusion of progression. And then by giving you little things here and there that actually aren't advancing mankind, actually they're slowing mankind down. You're no longer thinking. Google tells you what to think. But I have Google, I can just look it up. How much knowledge have you actually retained? And I'll give you another example of this, not to go on a rant, but I think it is important for my audience to hear where I'm at. I was in Philadelphia and I lived there. And every morning I would drive, and I'm talking literally like 4 times a week, to a cafe. I put it in my Waze and I go to the cafe. About 6 months in, I realized, I don't know how to get to this cafe. I've been going to this cafe been driving to this cafe for 6 months, and I don't know how to get there. I am relying on technology to do the thinking for me. I don't even know, people don't know basic geography anymore. Forget mathematics, geography, anything. And so our minds are actually getting much smaller, which is why all of these things seem so implausible, because we don't understand basic science.
Absolutely. I mean, look.
That is entirely on you, Candace.
Yeah, like, I use, GPS when I go for a walk. If I'm going somewhere in particular.
Right.
I use the GPS to be like, okay, I need to turn down this street and that street.
Right.
Well, after that first time of doing it, I don't use the GPS to get home.
Yeah.
Because I look around and I go, all right, yada yada street, there's a big ass cemetery there. All right, here's the cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, even being in the car and, sitting in the passenger seat going, oh, yellow house, okay, we're getting close, you know? Like, it's called landmarking shit in your own brain.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's entirely on Candace.
Yeah.
And this really shows where she is, I think, mentally, if this story is true.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to a lot of places in my job with Shipt, but even when I worked with other people in pizza and sandwich shops that did deliveries, we knew our ways around. Anyone that takes a regular path that I've known anyway might not be able to entirely describe in detail how to get somewhere, but they know their own way around without relying on tech every single time. If Candace needed her phone to get her to a place she supposedly went to 4 times a week for months, that is on her. I can't think of a single person I know or would call a friend that would have that issue. And then we get a glimpse into how simple this man is.
Oh, Christ.
Your cell phone, right? Like I can't even explain how the cell phone works. Almost nobody can. To your point, you use Waze and you just have it drive you wherever you go, and you realize, oh, I've lost the ability to like learn how to navigate now all of a sudden as well. I believe that a lot of people that follow me are going to love what you said about the reset thing as well, because the type of technology that we're seeing in these videos is potentially not an invention, it's a discovery. And the beauty about discoveries is that it doesn't require some level of advancement to comprehend the concepts in general. So a lot of people think, like even going back to like the pyramids, like how did they make these things and move these giant stones as well? But when you start to dig into the science that we're going to talk about, you realize like, oh, well, even if they weren't as advanced to have cell phones like this, they still could have understand these underlying concepts of the universe. And maybe they were able to produce these types of effects in very low-tech kind of ways in general.
We're told stupid things about that, by the way. I mean, the story that they're giving us, New History, it was just slaves. No.
Just add more slaves.
Explain that to me. Without a power, Joe. No. That actually, I'm not comprehending. There were just more slaves than you could have imagined. How many? I'm like, no, explain to me. How many slaves, and with not even so much as a wheel? I mean, it really explains to me how this was made and why this lines up with Orion's belt. I mean, really, what kind of slaves? Just more slaves than you would ever know. We are being told a very dumb version of history, while at the same time, the military-industrial complex is destroying history all around the world. I mean, the most ancient cities are being destroyed. And you, when I look now and I'm like, Iraq and Syria and Egypt and the amount of bombs that we're dropping, and when you look into it, what we are destroying, I'm like, this could hold the answer to so much. So what we're talking about is energy. So I want you to explain it as if you're explaining it to a child, because I do believe that we have a childlike understanding of science. Like, I do not have a science brain, so I want you to explain what exactly you believe happened.
Yeah, so first...
What? What in the actual flying fuck? How did we go from Malaysian air flight to UFO? And I know you got the explanation right there. But we go from Malaysian air flight going missing to UFOs to teleportation to fucking world history being destroyed, supposedly. Well, partially. And then fucking... But we're here to talk about energy.
Now,
what in the actual flying fuck?
Yeah. Well, look.
Or
like I said,
non-flying fuck, I guess.
I skipped a lot of shit.
Fair.
I skipped a lot of shit to get to this point.
Also, they had wheels, they had pulleys.
Just wait for it.
The slave labor helped.
Let me go through what I had to. I had to bother to research this shit. Let me get some use out of it.
Okay.
So first, I am certain that people know how phones fucking work. Jesus. As for the pyramids, we know how they did it, and it has been mentioned before on one of my favorite shows called It's Probably Not Aliens. It's a great podcast. Look it up sometime. The pyramids were probably not built by slave labor. The slaves labored in the fields, and Egyptian citizens, or at least non-slaves, volunteered their time to help construct the pyramids as a matter of worship.
I mean, it makes sense given all of the living quarters that are around the pyramids that were given to the workers.
Yeah. People did shifts in the pyramid building.
Yeah. Makes more sense than slaves being made to do it.
Someone in your household would go and do their shift, and then you would go and do yours.
Yeah.
It was a cultural build.
Yeah.
It wasn't using slaves. The slaves were kept in the fields because you don't want the slaves that aren't part of your religion to fucking begin with.
True.
Building your religiously significant buildings.
Yeah, that and the slaves have more use out in the field, making sure all the crops grow and all that stuff.
Because the slaves too. It wasn't, we have this view in America that all slavery was like ours, which was real fucking bad.
Yeah.
I'm not saying slavery was ever good. It wasn't.
No.
But the Hebrews and others were not treated the same as America treated its slaves. The Hebrews were allowed to keep a certain amount of the crops for themselves.
Yeah.
They were allowed certain freedoms. Well, what would be considered freedoms by the slaves in the American South.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had a lot more leeway. They were closer to being serfs, as we would know it, than slaves.
Yeah.
But they generally there's nothing to back up that they were used to build the pyramids.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that they've discussed in better detail on. It's probably not aliens. Anyway, yeah, no one has pushed the slave labor theory of the pyramids for some time. And yes, the people in a lot of the prior cultures were a mix of minds. Some were great at math and planning, others were great at religion, and others were great at farming and other trade skills because that is how societies work. It's fucking bollocks that Candace is so solipsistic in her worldview. As for her saying that cultural sites are being destroyed by war, yes, that is true, but not in the way that she would like. ISIS has destroyed a number of sites, as have other groups like the Taliban. Russia has destroyed at least 350 Christian sites in Ukraine. Israel has destroyed some of the world's oldest mosques and Christian churches since the start of the Gaza genocide. The dictator of Syria has used banned bombs on churches to destroy suspected dissidents.
Wait. Banned in the regards of against the Geneva Convention?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like barrel bombs. You know what a barrel bomb is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what a barrel bomb is.
Yeah. Yeah, there's footage that that the Syrian army has released of them dropping barrel bombs.
That's real illegal.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
as weird as that sounds, yes, it's murder, but
yeah, it's
like, in the terms of war, that's illegal.
Yeah, and it's super murder. They're doing it from helicopters, like just above the things. Yeah, so they're blowing up barrel bombs filled with all sorts of shrapnel
that are taking out civilian targets primarily, which is that's at least 3 war crimes.
It's so many. It's so fucking many. So, Candace's favorite Christians, the Nazis, in World War II Germany, purposefully bombed Polish churches in the Blitzkrieg, as well as many other significant sites. Unfortunately, attacking spots of culture is a consequence of war, not just for genocidal means, but more often in pursuit of killing or demoralizing swaths of people to try to get them to give up or at least make them unable to fight. It's not modern or recent, and if she really cared about learning history, she would know that shit. But back to the point, Ashton Forbes should know how phones work and should be around other people that know how phones work, since he is employed in tech at a company that makes and manages connection services and educational programs for people in the prison system, both inmates and administration.
Also, for a guy who seems so, technically versed in all of this science shit, he sure doesn't seem too confident about his knowledge on how science and shit works.
No,
despite his, quote unquote expertise in the matter.
Well, have you heard of superconductor LK99? Yes or no?
I've heard of superconductors, but not that exact one.
When he said it, I screamed. Because he's going to go on to explain in a bad way now. Superconductor LK99.
This LK99 situation, like a year ago, where people are saying, like, we can make a room temperature superconductor and we can see these quantum effects at the macroscopic scale. In fact, there's videos out there, and I will share this video with you because I want your audience to see it, where people in Korea and China were proving it to people in the West, where they have a literal rock which is this metamaterial of LK99 that they produce, and it's not one exact composition.
You remember
they
it now?
basically at the
Just let it
atomic
run.
level
Hold on.
created this metamaterial that is floating freely over a magnet, and not just floating freely, but it's flux pin. It's called the Mesner effect, and you can like hit it, and it just kind of like wiggles but stays stuck in position there. And when you look at that, it seems like anti-gravity. It seems like magic. Nobody can debunk it at all. Like they even take a loop ring and they loop it over the top of it, and so you can see there's nothing. It's not hanging by a wire or anything like that. And there was actually some disinformation that was passed around this as well, where what they do then is they have a bunch of people try to reproduce it, and then if one person fails, all of a sudden everybody on social media says, "Oh, we failed to replicate it. It must mean whatever they did was fake." And it's one of those situations, again, where it's like you're not believing what you see with your eyes. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like me. I use this analogy saying, if I say, here's a recipe for lasagna, and here I'm going to make this lasagna, and you eat it, you say, oh, that's really great. And then somebody else goes and makes it, and it's crap. They would say, nope, lasagna doesn't exist. I tried to make it, and it doesn't work out, right? Like, you didn't follow the recipe correctly.
LK99 is still under review, Jackoff. LK99, they did the floaty proof and all of that. The researchers that discovered the blend of materials in their work that they put out for peer review haven't been subjected to being scammers by the broader community. But peer review studies where the method was followed have been unable to reproduce their exact results. One of the reasons why, at least one that has been floated, is that the metals involved originally might have had some measure of impurity that caused the maglev phenomenon. It is under research and hasn't been completely thrown out, because if it can be replicated and perfected, the applications are numerous. But for him to compare it to a lasagna recipe not working out during peer review tells me that he either doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand how peer review and scientific growth work. Being outwardly ignorant of such things is what allows him to do stuff like peddle a device that he claims puts out more energy than it takes in, and it does it for free.
What is he, fucking working for Vault Tech?
Right. He hasn't sought a patent on said device, and he only shows it to people that sign a huge pile of NDA papers. That said, the people that know about those kinds of energy grifts say it is just an update on older grifts that have been around for decades. Like the devices they used to sell to you that would plug into the power port of a car that were supposed to regulate energy and make your car more fuel efficient. That's not one of his devices, but it's in the same line of thought. He refuses to get a patent on this device because it would mean putting his design out into the world. His critics say this is because his design is either bullshit or not nearly as cool as he makes it out to be. Either way, he's a fucking fraud.
Yeah, it's...
I can buy that the lithium battery shipment on board MH370 caused the fire that led to the catastrophe, but I do not for 1 second buy what he is really selling, which is the United States and allies teleported the plane to a nearby airfield and put everyone on board either to death or into government service. This is hot garbage. And just like Candace saying previously that the plane that struck the Pentagon never happened, is a slap in the face of the survivors and their families. This teleport bullshit by this science grifter is the same fucking thing. Having said all this, Ashton Forbes can eat a huge plate of dicks for all eternity, and I hope hell actually exists so that I can see him there. That's all we're doing on this one.
Also, the Pentagon thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, is after we'd done that episode, I went on to my YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
And I have a bunch of like random stand-up comedians that pop up in the set. Not all of them famous.
Right, right.
But this one dude was doing stand-up at the bar, and he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, you know, I first learned about karma and how much of a bitch she is when I was around about 10 years old, 2001. And everybody just like gets real silent, and he's like, oh, don't worry. It wasn't the towers. My dad actually worked at the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. He would whatever rank, Can't really disclose, but he worked at the Pentagon. And, I knew that my dad worked at the Pentagon, and I always use that as a leverage against bullies, like, hey, don't fuck with me. My dad works for the Pentagon. I'll ruin your life.
Right.
Well, one day, he was a little shithead, and, lied to some kids, beat up another one, and then he went to class, and he was feeling all like top dog, and then he gets, teacher gets a phone call, he sees the towers go down on the news, and teacher pulls him aside, takes him out to the hallway, and gives him the phone, and says that it's the Pentagon. And for the 5 seconds between taking the phone and putting it to his head, he was sitting there like, oh my God, is this what karma is like? Because they had just found out that the Pentagon had been hit.
Yeah.
And it happened to be the wing where his father worked.
Yeah.
He takes the phone and he puts it up to his ear, and his dad goes, hey son, I just wanted to let you know I'll be home in time for dinner. And he hangs up the phone on his end. And he felt so relieved, and then decided from that point forward he would not be a douchebag for the rest of his life. Because he sat back and just went, I just experienced karma. That didn't feel good.
Yeah. Well, we're moving on now into episode 81.
Also, fuck him about the fucking superconductors.
Yeah.
Because they have, of the ones that I've seen anyway, they have managed to recreate similar to the L-95.
LK-99, yeah.
Yeah, LK-99. In the regards of freezing the bitch. That's been the only one where basically they drop it into some, what's that called?
What, liquid nitrogen?
Yeah, liquid nitrogen. Yeah. They drop it into liquid nitrogen, they pull it out, and they put it over the magnet, and it does the floaty bit that it's supposed to do. One guy actually hooked up a little generator setup, and he was just like, this is something that's a little fun that doesn't generate much power, but it is a nice little zap if you touch it. And he takes his, superconductor piece and he puts it into the middle and he gives it a spin and it just starts spinning on its own. And he goes, now you're going to wait until it looks like it's just stopped moving. And it's sitting there spinning, and then it just stops. And he goes, now here's the fun part. And taps it, and you see the electrical arc go into his fingertips. And he's like, oh! See, that's the fun part.
Well, yeah, I mean, the work is ongoing on all that shit. And for him to just, like I said, he either doesn't want to or doesn't, period, understand how any of this works.
Yeah.
Like, I think he understood just enough on how to run an energy grift, and that's all he needs to know for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So, I wish the worst things to happen unto him. So here, now we get into episode 81 of the intro. I'm going to tell y'all, the only clip we're playing from episode 81 is this intro. And I wrote a lot of shit to justify why, but let's let it run.
Alright guys, welcome to a special episode of Candace. I'm always reading your comments. So many people ask me, Candace, when are you going to share your conversion story? Why the Catholic Church? How did you get there? You guys are definitely sensing that there has been a change in me over the last year, and there certainly has been a change in me in the last year. And while I'm still not fully there yet and ready to talk about that story, I can tell you for sure that the expression that to become a student of history means to become a Catholic is something that I have taken to heart and that I believe to be real. There are a lot of aspects right now of people recognizing that we are in this spiritual battle. We can't make sense of a lot of the things that are happening here in the West. Why do people want to implement the sorts of changes that we're seeing? Why does it feel like we're fighting for our children from the state? How did we get into this predicament so quickly? You feel it, I feel it, and we're all searching for answers. And I believe the answer really can be found in the Bible. There's nothing new under the sun. But what really does that mean? A lot of history, I believe, has been hidden. I've been particularly interested in the history of Christianity, the things that we don't learn in our textbooks at school. And it is my belief that it has been, is, and forever will be a war against Christ. And so, one moment in history that I'd like to speak about, the long moment in history, is the Soviet Union. We don't learn enough about what happened in the Soviet Union, the victims of the Soviet Union, and really what happened to the people that were executing those punishments, those deaths. Today, I am so honored to have a conversation with somebody who is well equipped to speak about that time in history. His Excellency Bishop Schneider is here to join me. Welcome to Candace.
Thank you, Candace.
Okay, for one thing, totally off topic, off script entirely. One of the Reddit communities I follow is USSR. There is some really interesting shit that winds up in that Reddit feed.
Yeah.
Like clips from movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like the Soviet Union was producing its own films and its own fictional shit. Some of it looks really interesting. Like some of it, I'm like, man, I wonder if there's a version of this that exists with subtitles. I want to know what this crazy fucking story is, because like you see the trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, all right, you know, like I want to give it a shot. I want to give it a chance.
Yeah.
You know. But a lot of it too is just people like posting up like pictures of pins that maybe their grandparents had or something. Like that, or maybe military pins, or achievement pins for work or what have you.
Yeah.
And they post pictures of those up, and they're like, "Can anyone tell me what this is?" Found in my grandfather's trunk, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or like they found like somebody's old uniform, maybe their grandmother's old uniform, and they want to put it on a mannequin for display, but they don't know what the fuck any of the pins are because, of course, all the script on them is in Cyrillic.
Yeah.
And running it through Google Translate doesn't work because it's metallic, and a lot of that stuff is faded over time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
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 Okay. Well, firstly, even in third grade, for the very short history span that I had, because also, fuck the fucking Florida school system and the goddamn fucking FCAT.
Yeah.
That cheated me out of half a year of goddamn fucking social studies, history, and
cheated you
science.
And your siblings.
Oh yeah.
Because they hated it so much, and I remember you were like, I don't like what school looks like up ahead.
Yeah.
And it was a very adult take from a child. That's why me and your mom listened, and we were like, we don't like any of it either.
Yeah.
Because we were spending time helping you study for shit that never showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Shit that never showed up on a test whatsoever. And it wasn't like a college course where, like, in one of my college courses, one of my humanities courses, my professor was teaching literally out of a different book than the class was told to get in our syllabus. We all had a book. Every other humanities course, there were like 4 or 5 on one campus.
Yeah.
Everyone had the same textbook. The other 4 humanities professors taught out of that textbook. This bitch taught out of a different one entirely.
Jesus.
With zero regard. Only one person in our class had that book because someone he knew in a previous year was like, "Oh shit, you've got that professor? This is the book she teaches out of. This is the only one she teaches out of."
Yeah.
Because a friend of hers wrote it.
Oh.
A friend of hers was the writer on it. And I was like nothing about this lady made any fucking sense. And one day I went over to see her about something regarding the course, and it wasn't book related. I had kind of resigned myself to, okay, I'm just going to have to take notes in class. I'm not even going to crack the book open. She's not teaching out of the fucking thing. I wasted my money. It's a really good textbook. I wish I could have kept it. But anyway. So I go to her office, and I don't remember what I was in there for, but I look up and I realize for the degrees she has on her wall, not a single one is for humanities. She was degreed in interior design.
What the fuck was she doing in the humanities?
I asked her that when I was like, okay, like I came around to that eventually near the end of our hour. I was like, hey, so I noticed your degree's on the wall. Good work. You don't have like a humanities degree? You've got like interior design. I see you got a couple of those. And she goes, yeah, I'm just waiting for an interior design professorship to open up here, and then I'm just going to transfer into that. It's like, so you didn't, like, I mean, we all have to study humanities, but you didn't make that a focus at any point. Just, no, like, to be honest with you, I don't really enjoy it. I'm just, I'm just waiting for someone to die or retire. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. And I went back and told my study group.
Mm-hmm.
I sat down and I was like, guys, you should all, so you can see this for yourself, you should all request an hour of her time. And I told them why. And I was like, you'll see what I mean when you look up on that wall. You can ask her about it if you want to. You do you, but just saying.
Yeah.
Within a couple of weeks, like, out of the 5 of them, I think 3 had actually gone, and they came up to me and they were like, yeah, did that, and you're right, and it's too late to drop this course, but I have put in a complaint. So, yeah, but, so, that was a longer intro than usual for her. But first, the quote Candace loves to use when discussing her trip into Catholicism about how true students of history became Catholics, that comes from the 19th century. And it gets paraphrased a lot, but the original quote is, "To be deep in history is to cease to be a Protestant." And it was attributed to John Henry Newman, a 19th century Anglican priest that became a Catholic cardinal after he converted. That's quite a...
That's quite a promotion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't get the word out.
Yeah.
It's from his 1845 work, quote, "An essay on the development of Christian doctrine," end quote, which he wrote shortly before his conversion. It reflects his belief that a thorough study of church history leads one to recognize the Catholic Church as the continuation of the early Christian church. He argued that a deep understanding of historical Christianity would reveal that Protestantism was not entirely consistent with the beliefs and practices of the early church. It is a widely misused quote, and the people that use it don't tend towards seeking out what he meant. He wasn't saying that all historical study automatically leads to Catholicism, as many Protestants and others have studied the church without becoming Catholics. But anyway, the bishop she has on is an anti-Vatican II guy, and it should shock no one that he is her type of Catholic minister. He grew up in the USSR, and he tells a lot of stories about it, about Catholics that lived there during that time. We're not going to play any of this interview because, for one, it's really softball, and there's no way to really prove or disprove many of his claims. What I will say is that he insists the Catholics were the most persecuted religion, but they really weren't. Catholics suffered the least among the many denominations in the USSR. Muslims, Protestants, and Jews saw their places of worship repurposed, closed, or destroyed, and their clergy killed or sent away. In Ukraine, the Ukraine Orthodox Church was forced to merge with the Russian Orthodox Church in order to keep practicing. The Russian Orthodox Church was also whittled down significantly, and for the institutions that continued to exist, they were often infiltrated by KGB spies on a constant hunt for dissidents. Candace and this guy claimed that this was a Christian Holocaust, and it absolutely was not. They both make the claim in here that tens of millions died due to Soviet purges, which is also not true. The USSR kept pretty good records on deaths and causes and reasons in its time. What we know after the fall of the Soviet Union is that while many people were killed directly or indirectly, the estimate of 20 million or more dead was grossly misleading. The number, over decades of rule, was closer to a range of 3 to 6 million from purges and famines combined, which is still horrific. But it is not 60 million, or the lower estimate of 20 million. But these higher numbers are what they will quote time and again here, and there's nothing new in this. So I'm skipping this interview, and we're moving on to Tom Village Idiot Woods. This interview is from months ago, as you'll be able to tell in the intro.
All right, guys, so a couple of weeks ago, I got into a lot of trouble because, well, I'm always kind of in trouble. But this time, the reason I was in trouble was because I said that I have left the Church of Science. What did I mean by that? What do you mean you don't trust the science or trust the experts and people were coming undone and referring to me as a flat earther? And the reality is, a lot of things have happened over the last few years that have clarified my perspectives. And my perspective today is that science has very much become a faith. You have a bunch of people who have sort of ordained themselves ministers and priests, and they tell you not to think at all and just simply follow their instructions. And there's no greater example of that and how many times that they have been wrong and how they are able to inspire mass hysteria than COVID. I always say, let's not forget what happened during COVID. It should really wake you up. In many ways, science has also become a psychology, and so I'm very pleased to introduce you to my next guest. He has written a book entitled The Diary of a Psychosis, How Public Health Disgraced Itself During the COVID Mania, and also another book which just seems really on par with me. It's entitled The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. Everything, well, almost everything you know about American history is wrong. It's definitely something we've been hitting at a lot on this show. Tom Woods, welcome to Candace.
Thank you, Candace.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
So Tom Woods is a particular kind of Nazi. The kind that got an education from Harvard and then tells you not to go there and not to send your kids there or to any college.
Huh.
He's also the worst kind of COVID denier.
Yeah.
As they continue.
I mean, with titles like these, you can't be adored by the media.
No, I'm not.
You're not too adored by the media.
I'm not looking to be.
So the most recent one you published is this one, The Diary of a Psychosis. Tell me what this book is about and what led you to wanting to publish it.
Well, you and I both lived through what happened in 2020. And as it was happening, I wanted to know, are there any other ways of looking at this other than extreme panic? I was looking for other voices, and they were hard to find, but eventually I did find them. Because I didn't want to just give up my life for nothing. I wanted to be told that there was good, we were going to accomplish something by doing this. I didn't want to just throw my life away for nothing. And yet I was astonished at how many people who were willing to do that, who wouldn't even bother to look up the numbers. Like, for example, after a few months of this, are we seeing any better results in places that are more psychotic than others? No one even seemed interested. It was bizarre. So I started writing. I have an email newsletter that a lot of people subscribe to. I started writing about this every day, and I would send out charts, and I'd say, let's compare this place and this place, and it doesn't make any sense. And you find that the top 25 craziest lockdown states, you plot them against the bottom 25, the most lenient states, the lines are identical. Identical. So are we doing all this for nothing? I wanted to answer that question. Are we doing all this for nothing? And I thought, surely the world will welcome research like this. It turns out, no. I was so astonished. And even though I had maybe a lower estimate of mankind than a lot of people do, it went way low after this. To see how many people were forming their opinions on the basis of tribal allegiance. You know, my favorite actors are all telling me to stay home and stay safe, so I guess I have to do it. I don't know what the source of it is, but there is definitely a drive to conform. And it's like that feeling you had in high school that a lot of the popular kids had, where I would die 1,000 deaths before say anything that would get me out of the popular group. I never had to worry about that. I was the biggest nerd in high school. I was never tempted that way. I was never going to be in the popular group. So I've always kind of been the guy who wants to get the whole story. And so the reason it's called Diary of a Psychosis is that I was writing about this day by day, and I was observing all the little things. We all know all the big things, but I remember all the little bits of craziness that were going on day by day. And I had people writing to me saying, you are keeping me from winding up in a rubber room, because I thought I was the only one. All my friends, they don't want to get together. They want to sit 100 yards apart. I don't know what's going on here. And so I just started writing what I was finding. And it turns out that story is like the exact opposite of what we're getting on TV, like the exact opposite.
So he is the worst kind of idiot.
Yeah.
Because...
Also, for a Nazi, he's terrible at keeping fucking records.
Oh, the Nazis weren't that good at record keeping.
Oh,
I mean,
some of them
depending.
were.
Yeah.
The
Depending.
ones that decided to burn all of their things, they were good.
Yeah.
Same with USSR.
Well, he couldn't have been looking at full data sets on a daily basis because they weren't being published. People critical of his newsletter at the time noted this, as well as his lack of taking into account that the deaths from COVID were being curbed down by people doing things like masking in public, staying apart whenever possible, and staying clean. The rise of my job as a ship shopper at the time, as well as others like me in that line of work, was crucial. Because me being in stores on a daily meant that anywhere from 10 to 15 other people at a minimum were not out there, either infecting others or getting infected. Immunocompromised people have already been dealt a bad hand, but having an easy-to-catch airborne virus out in the world wasn't helping. There are a lot of people that still cannot get the COVID vaccines and rely on people like me to do things out in the world for them. But this guy and his cherry-picked data don't allow for the nuances of life to seep through. What he and Candace fail to realize is that the real threat of diseases and viruses and whatever else we want to call these things is that they do in fact mutate in hosts. They adapt when they infect before they spore out. Candace claims to have had COVID 3 times, each time during her pregnancies. Alex Jones claimed to have it many times, and he talked about how he passed it on to many others, not just his employees, but also his family members. I ran basic numbers on this guy's data, and what he wasn't accounting for in his work were basic things like population growth, population density, and public behaviors, whether enforced or not, as contributing to or against COVID and the spread. Florida itself had a lot of relaxed mandates, but until a vaccine was available to me, and even after it, I wore a fucking mask every time I was in a store doing shops. If I have the slightest cough these days, I put one on. It's not a huge deal for me to do, and I don't want to pass whatever may be on me onto other people. But he never saw it like that, and part of me thinks that he would have been fine letting the virus wipe people out. Y'all will see what I mean as we go on.
Well, it's interesting because I was one of these people that was blessed. I was anti-vax before COVID took place, and I had done all of my research, and I had understood what Big Pharma was because I was, and I do say blessed, by being injured by a vaccine when I was 20 years old. The Gardasil vaccine, a lot of women were injured by that vaccine. Yeah. And it was one of these things where I had this mini seizure on the doctor's floor, and then he told me to suspend the series because I think it's about 3 shots you have to get. And afterwards, I just remember thinking, why did I get this shot? I know nothing about this shot. I'm just listening to this guy. When I did my research, I was stunned at how they had manipulated the data, how they had lied about the risk, how they just sort of used this campaign, this fear campaign, to say to women, like, you're going to get, this will stop you from getting cancer, cervical cancer, or ovarian cancer. I can't remember which one it is. And when I actually clawed back all that research and did the numbers, I realized, how could they do this? This is so evil. How could they lie like this? And so that kind of began my journey, and I began looking into each and every single vaccine and made a decision for myself not to vaccinate my children. I'm known as an anti-vaxxer, it's totally fine. But I'm grateful for it because I went into COVID because of that, eyes wide open. Like, there was no way after you have a mini seizure and in a doctor's form when you're 20 years old that you are ever going to allow a fear campaign to manipulate you into putting something into your body.
So instead, she convinces people to do the opposite. Let's talk about Gardasil a little bit. It actually is a vaccine that protects against HPV and thusly cervical, vaginal, vulval, anal, throat, back of mouth cancers, and genital warts. It is done in 3 doses on anyone over the age of 19. Candace experienced the most rare side effect, less than 1% rarity. Vaccine information is generally open, and even 15 years ago this was the case. She had every opportunity to find out what this was, and it's on her if she didn't do that. I wouldn't wish adverse effects on anyone, even if I don't like them as a person. But I also have a hard time believing this story, given how rare seizures are with Gardasil, up against also her penchant for lying. I simply don't believe this happened to her. A friend or a relative, maybe. But
also, what would be believable about her having a seizure about it is what she's turned into.
Right. Yeah.
Because if she was a different person when she was like a kid, like she keeps saying that, like, you know, everybody just, they say that they don't, like, recognize me and that I was different when I was a kid, It's like maybe that seizure caused something to misfire upstairs,
Right.
and that's why she's the woman she is today.
I mean, it's possible. But moving on.
But the reality is that the entire world now is run by fear campaigns. And this gets even into, which I love, because we were just talking about this off camera, you're talking about Ron Paul, who actually endorsed this book, which is about the best endorsement you could have. For me, would be Thomas Massey or Ron Paul. And he endorsed this book. But when you look through the lens even of American history, how they are able to modify human behavior, get so many people to acquiesce to government incentives, to give up their freedoms, it's always fear as the ingredient to get us to accept whatever, even if it's insane.
And it's usually, I also wrote a book about the 2008 financial crisis, and when that broke out, it was, we don't have time to talk to you about this. We just have to shovel all this money to all these institutions so all these bigwigs can get their bonuses. And I'm sorry we don't have time to talk about it. The same thing with COVID. So we just don't have time. We'd love to hear all your crazy opinions, but we just don't have time. The experts need to run things, and you need to shut up. So it's a pattern, and I think part of the reason people are inclined to just go along, I think partly is that I think the education system encourages following the leader and repeating on the test what you were told in the classroom. So that's part of it. But also what happens in American history is we have some big crises like the Great Depression or like COVID or whatever else. And there's an official, regime-approved version of what happened. And then there's everybody else trying to say, wait a minute, there's another way of thinking about this. The official regime-approved version winds up in the history textbooks every single time. So the Great Depression was caused by underconsumption or greed, or greed caused the Great Depression. Greed caused that level of fall in production because of greed. What are you talking about? Greed exists. Greed's around all the time. How's that your explanation? But that goes in the textbooks. So this is why it's 4 years after COVID, I guess 4.5 now. There's a reason we still need to keep talking about it. Because if we don't, then we're going to get another one of these conventional wisdom stories that just ossifies into the permanent version, which is wonderful, selfless public servants like Anthony Fauci tried their best to make us healthy, but we stupid heads who hate science refuse to go along. That is going to be in that textbook. Absolute 100% guarantee. So this is why when people say, you just have to move on. Time to move on. I don't think Thomas Jefferson ever said, if the government really screws you, you should probably just move on. I think if we just move on, then this takes its place alongside the Great Depression, the New Deal, 9/11, the 2008 crisis, COVID, Ukraine, as all having basically cartoon versions winding up in the history books.
It's worse than cartoons. Literally, I just love this. Almost everything you know about American history is wrong.
Yeah, textbooks don't teach this. So, as we do here, let's go through his bullshit. His book being endorsed by Ron Paul is basically him getting a Dutch rudder.
Don't bring the legendary Dutch rudder into this.
They're old friends. The 2008 financial crisis was handled quickly with a statement by President W. Bush, in September of that year, and the money being paid out around a month later. It's about 16 years since it happened, but in 2023, the last of the companies involved paid back their loans, and overall the government made money on those loans. It was probably a necessary step that took to task many of the problems that led to the crisis, such as issuing subprime loans to people that had no hope of paying them back, especially as the rates rose upward. There were a lot of other factors as well, but that was the one that I personally saw affect people that I knew and worked with, and it put me off of wanting to even fuck with mortgage lending for many years. But his bullshit about doing it so that bigwigs could get their bonuses was not ever supposed to be a part of the structure. Some of the companies, like AIG, abused the money given to them, and they were publicly dealt with. But I don't expect his selective memory to recall that, because he's a fucking asshole. I have never, ever seen greed listed as an outright single reason for the Great Depression. That was caused by a handful of issues, and corporate greed was just one of them. Loose banking terms were another reason. Farm production not being where people assumed it would be was another, and so on.
Heavy droughts.
Yeah.
Insects. What have you.
Dust Bowl, what have you, yeah. His statement is false. No textbook is saying that greed alone was the cause. If textbooks in the future explain that public health experts tried worldwide to save people from themselves with masks, gloves, distancing, and so on, good. Because the assholes that were spreading COVID were following none of the advice, and they made it worse far longer than it needed to be, and unfortunately still is for many people. Time for Candace to say more bullshit.
Fell down this rabbit hole, so to speak, over the last couple of years, and it's so jarring and it's so shocking, and it takes such a tremendous amount of humility to admit that you know nothing. And I have such a thirst for knowledge now, and I do recognize, and there were always the signs there, that what we've actually implemented here in America is not unlike, it's actually an exact replica of like Soviet education. It's like Stalin youth, essentially. And I learned about that because I was reading a Thomas Sowell book, Inside the American Education System.
Oh, I read that one.
Great book, and he actually talks about how they're able to, even when there's that one child that stands up, and he was speaking about sex education in particular, and how they start by trying to isolate the child and making them think that their parents are backwards and their parents don't know anything, and like, you're a part of this new generation and this thing, and everybody's having sex. And he says in that book, and the reality was before the 70s, before it was, I believe, Jimmy Carter who signed off on the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Before the implementation of the Department of Education, the majority of high schoolers were graduating with their virginity intact. And
We've talked about this before. But I call bullshit because, for one thing, we've covered this, but it is a good example of the kind of thing we're going to be skipping through. That kind of information being shared in the 50s and on even into modern times is really based on a lot of trust, because anytime I ever took surveys like that in school, kids around me were always afraid their answers would be known. That disappeared when I started going to a cult school, and such surveys never happened anymore. But that's private school for you. Candace goes on to talk absolute shit about how kids that don't want to participate in sexual education because of religion get ostracized, and Woods goes along with it. He says that we had more retracted papers in medicine than at any time before, and he is right. But what he fails to mention is that most of the retracted papers have come from things called paper mills, which produce fake papers. The paper gets called out and gets retracted. Such things hinder real progress, and I think that in itself is the point. He takes several minutes to come around to a very false statement.
Also, the sex education due to religion thing.
Yeah.
Flat out say that one's bullshit, because, you know, I have friends that went to Catholic school.
Yeah.
And that Catholic school is very, very rich. And they're practically a private school. I mean, Pete's sake,
No, it is a private school.
Yeah, they have chefs on staff to cook the kids fucking 4-star meals.
Yeah.
Like, that's a private school.
It's not cheap, yeah.
And they teach sex education there with the simple thing of, look, you're all godless heathens if you have sex before wedlock, but also, you're teenagers, it might happen, here you go. Don't do it, though, you godless heathens.
Yeah. I mean...
And that's why I could never work at a Catholic school, because I'd call everybody a godless heathen.
All the time. You're all a bunch of GHs. You little GH minors and these adults in here. When did he become a Jewish grandmother? I don't know. What? Mishegnus. God. How dare you? You know. I couldn't do it just because I'd be doing that all the time. I would become that character. It would be weird for everyone. But here we go. This one I've called peanut allergies.
One quick little example. You notice that in America we have so many people with peanut allergies. And it seems to be like just an American thing. Like, why don't they have peanut allergies in Zimbabwe? You know, like, why do we have them here? And the consensus was we keep kids from having peanuts or peanut products for the first few years of their lives to prevent them from getting peanut allergies. It turns out that causes the peanut allergies. But yet, American researchers were the ones telling various groups trying to end hunger, don't use peanuts, even though they're easy to transport, they're protein rich, they don't have to be refrigerated, they're very easy to use for this purpose. But American researchers say, no, because you're going to encourage peanut allergies. The opposite encourages peanut allergies. And this is we have all these faulty cases of consensus, and no one dares say anything because they don't want to be on the outs. I want to be one of the cool people.
Now, what we are covering is obviously insane here. This election season has been the most insane. We really don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Wow.
I left the ad read in there to show you all how jarring they are this week.
Yeah.
Every single time she goes into an ad read in these interviews, it is like no fucking warning.
It just...
Yeah, well, because it's not her doing an ad read. They just slotted it in.
Okay, that's just laziness. I mean, fair enough on her team's part. They
Four people.
practically don't have to do anything
Her
for their
team is
paycheck.
4 people.
Yeah, they practically don't have to do anything for their paychecks. But at the same time, if you're trying to present your host, maybe do like a little bit of a fade away on what the dude's saying, play a little bit of the entry music, play the ad, play the entry music again, fade back in.
Yeah, no, those things just appear like loud phantoms. Anyway, the peanut allergy nonsense stopped around 2015, and no one in America was telling people in Zimbabwe not to eat fucking peanuts. That's ridiculous. But anyway, that was close to 10 years ago. The current consensus was based on not only studying the effect of keeping kids from peanut foods, but also how other countries handled it. Anyway, they changed the standards in 2015, and they recommend foods with peanuts and peanut elements for babies. I guess it's too much to expect a student of history and statistics to know this, you know? Anyway, the ad I cut off was for gold bullshit. And one of the things that I hate, I really do hate this, is that one of the most popular baby snacks for years, even with the current crap going on, is Bomba Peanut Puffs.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know where they're made?
Where?
Israel.
Yeah.
It's right there on the label.
Yeah.
You can't miss it. Yeah. It kills me because them things are delicious.
Oh, yeah.
God.
Yeah,
Kevin Smith used to snack on them like by the handful.
the only place that I know to get them is fucking Trader Joe's.
No.
No?
No, dude, you can go to Target.
Oh.
They're in the baby section.
Oh.
They're in huge bags. They're in huge multi-pack bags in the baby section.
See, I'd never think to go to the baby section to look for Bomba Puffs.
That's where they are.
Because when you go into Trader Joe's...
There isn't one.
Yeah.
Like a baby section?
Well, no, not a baby section. But there's not a baby section for it. But if you go into at least the one in St. Louis Park...
Yeah.
You just have to go through the entry door, down where, like, the weird frozen island aisles are.
Okay.
Go down, I think it's the left one, and look up, and right in the middle, they're right there.
Ah.
Why I still know that, I don't know, because I only ever went in there, like, 3 times max.
Yeah.
But it's a really small fucking store.
It is. Yeah, well, but yeah, you can get them anywhere in, like, the baby section of pretty much any store.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're sold in various amounts. I think Target probably has the best price for the most amount of them. But, yeah. I've been buying them for people for years. Any rate, the ad I cut, Candace doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about, or she doesn't care. Either way. And then here's the next one.
Is really just common sense. You know, like when I embarked on creating a series, I actually have an entire series called A Shot in the Dark where I speak about vaccines to parents, and I just go through the history that they are not allowed access to. I mean, it's crazy how much money I had to spend to access these original studies. Like, you have to get all
because
the
they
shots
were
for your
debunked.
kids, but we can't let you read the studies unless you pay us $150 to see where the genesis of this.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And the more that I got into it, and I realized they've been controlling the diagnostic conditions, they have been manipulating numbers, and when I just show parents these charts, like, there is this idea talking about how powerful of a tool fear is. And my favorite one is tetanus. The parents know nothing. My husband and I got together. I'm like, we're not vaccinating our kids. And he's like, what? Well, we have to do tetanus, of course. Polio and tetanus are the ones that there's like this ingrained fear.
Yeah.
And so I said to my husband, I say to people all the time, how many people do you think during its peak incidence? These, by the way, are statistics from the AMA, the American Medical Association. I'm not finding this stuff on like a Reddit feed. I only use approved government sources. And I say, how many people do you think during its peak incidence in America, before the introduction of the vaccine, were getting tetanus, like just were being diagnosed with tetanus? And I'll tell them, I'm like, the population was around, 129 million in America at the time. And everyone will say 100,000, maybe 300,000. The answer is 550. Right? So it's little things like this that people just don't know, right? They just know tetanus, that your kids are getting 17 shots. I'm like, 550 people in total got tetanus before they introduced the vaccine. And so it's so important for people to just have access to this information so that they can not, maybe you still decide that you want your child to get the tetanus vaccine. I don't care. I don't ever push upon a parent what they should do. But I want you to for us to no longer be people that are conditioned by fear and a lack of knowledge.
Well, then she should know that it wasn't just 550 people ever that got tetanus. It was 550 people on average per year. But World War I drove those numbers up as soldiers were constantly exposed to tetanus spores through conflict. The vaccine was deemed safe and effective and beat the standard practice of dealing with tetanus infections. It was a cheap and effective lifesaver to anyone living in the modern world around rusted metals. I downloaded but haven't gone through the shot-in-the-dark materials yet, but I have a sinking feeling that this is the kind of bullshit being peddled. They dish for a couple more minutes, and he says a couple of factual things, but that is just to soften up the already receptive audience. And now, he is going to say some bullshit. This is his pattern. The thing Candace accuses other people of doing, 2 facts and a lie. I won't play the facts because it takes time to get through. But here is the lie.
The fucking... it's... Don't trust what the government has to say. I only use official government sources.
Yeah, I caught that too. But here we go. Here's the lie, okay?
Alright.
I'm sitting there thinking, when you say to me that it's 87% effective, is this like the COVID vaccine being 100% effective? It's because they literally said it's 100% effective. And when you go back and look at it, you think this can't be. But when you go back and look at it, it's that they had a vaccine group and a control group. And the vaccine group had like 1 infection and the control had 2. And since 2 is 100% more than 1, the COVID vaccine is 100% effective. Now, we all knew that 100% effective, the average person will hear that and think that means nothing can happen to me. It's 100% effective. They must have known that's how people would interpret that. So I'm thinking, geez, the shingles vaccine sounds pretty terrible compared to 100% that I might have had. So now I haven't gotten it. It's not because I want to get shingles. It's that now I feel like I've been awakened to something. I mean, I wrote the Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. I'm very skeptical.
Skeptical but not knowledgeable.
Clearly.
Because he didn't mention that the COVID-19 vaccine, specifically the one produced by Pfizer, there were other companies, and other companies in other countries, but specifically the one produced by Pfizer, only claimed 100% effectiveness in a group of kids aged 12 to 15.
Yeah.
It was a short-term study, but it proved the effectiveness of the vaccine enough so that minors, at least down to 12, could get it without fear. There was no 100% study for adults, and the efficacy rates were well published at the time and are still accessible today. The efficacy rates for adults with the Pfizer vaccine were in the high 90s. It was similar with other COVID-19 vaccines across the board. But this is the kind of crap this man pulls. You can see what Candace calls him a friend. After another minute or so, we get into one of Candace's actual beliefs, and I think it tells on herself quite a bit. We've talked about it before, but it bears repeating here.
So many common sense aspects to it, but I did have to think about this because I had such a reverence instilled in me for doctors and wanting to believe in the Hippocratic Oath, wanting to believe that they have our best interests at heart. And I realized all of these people are just human. And so now I just need to know who everyone was in high school, right?
Yeah.
Would this person have stood up if a teacher said to do something crazy and said, no, that sounds crazy? The reality is most people just go along and do what they have to do and keep their heads down. And
yeah, people fucking grow up, Candace. But this seems to be something she actually believes because she's repeated it many times over the years. I hold an opposite view. I think only emotionally stunted people are stuck in high school for whatever reason they may have. Maybe that was the best time of their life. For Candace, high school was a pretty shitty time. Aside from the well-known racist incident she went through that we have covered before regarding her classmates, there was another incident I read about in The Atlantic where Candace was assaulted outside of a Blockbuster Video she worked at as a teenager. I think these incidents and others helped give her a certain worldview that without therapy, she has probably found hard to process over the years. That's just my supposition. But combined with this belief of hers, I am willing to think this way for now. Moving on. Tom Woods goes on to say some pretty big things about Sweden.
Because I kind of thought, well, once we get the internet, people will understand the world. I guess not. But before we started recording, I mentioned I can't remember if it was with you or one of your associates, but Dr. Anders Tegnell was the state epidemiologist in Sweden, and everybody piled on him. And this was a guy who was very much an outlier because he very ostentatiously did not go along with the lockdown regime, and almost nobody in Sweden wore masks. When I finally took a trip to Sweden during all this, the only people wearing masks were American tourists. I'm not kidding. They just weren't, and it didn't make any difference, and nobody cared. But he said, it's going to take 3 years for me to be vindicated. 3 years of nothing but abuse and slander and unbelievable attacks. Like, you can't believe the entire medical establishment around the world going after him. And I think about a weakling like Anthony Fauci, who can't take some criticism very well. Anthony Fauci needs to be lauded and awarded and praised and people bowing before him. That's what he needs.
The signs in the yard. Thank you, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah. The bobblehead. I mean, come on. Bobblehead.
It was so bad.
And could you imagine him surviving for 3 days, much less 3 weeks, with the entire establishment coming down? And then it turns out the guy was vindicated because we have the numbers for all the countries of Europe and excess deaths during the period 2020 to 2023. And guess which country did the best in terms of good health? It was Sweden. So that means that all the things they said to us were false.
How do you think Sweden did during COVID-19?
Probably decently. I mean, it's fucking Sweden. They're... let's...
First off, Sweden, I love your people. I love your food. Not just
IKEA.
Not just talking about Swedish meatballs. I love a lot of Swedish food. It is so fucking good. IKEA is great. But based on public data, Sweden's COVID-19 policy, which was less restrictive than many other countries and did not include a general lockdown, resulted in a higher death toll compared to their Nordic neighbors. Here are the key points regarding Sweden's death toll. By September 1st, 2020, approximately 5,813 people had died with a COVID-19 diagnosis. The excess mortality rate in Sweden between March 1st and August 25th, 2020 was 11% compared to the average death rate for 2015 to 2019. By November 5th, 2020, Sweden reached 6,000 deaths, not even 2 months later. And in the following 6 weeks, 2,000 more people died. As of March 22nd, 2023, there were 23,851 confirmed COVID-19 deaths in Sweden. In comparison with other countries, Sweden's death rate of over 80 per 100,000 people was among Europe's highest. The death rate was approximately 10 times greater than those of Norway and Finland, and over 4 times than that of Denmark. Sweden ranked 57 in per capita deaths worldwide and 30th out of 47 European countries. The factors contributing to a higher death toll: a significant portion of the deaths occurred in nursing homes, with 1/3 to half of the deaths in some regions being residents of these facilities. The introduction of the virus into elderly care homes, especially in Stockholm, accounted for more than 50% of all deaths experienced in Sweden. The quality of care and hygiene procedures in nursing homes were identified as potential weaknesses that contributed to the spread of the virus. It is important to note that Sweden's approach was controversial and led to criticism domestically and internationally. The high death toll, particularly among the elderly, prompted even King Carl XVI Gustaf and Prime Minister Stefan Löfven to characterize Sweden's approach as a failure in December of 2020. This is where I'm going to cut this episode on Tom Woods. He goes on to push some sort of curriculum he has written for school kids, and he discusses with Candace that Ron Paul, former libertarian shitbag, also has a homeschool program. We're not going to get into that shit or anything else he has to say, now that I've proven his basic ass dishonest practices here. We're also skipping the next interview Candace did with a man named Neil Oliver on YouTube. Oliver is a Scotsman. Highly suggestible, he believes in Pizzagate and other Q conspiracy crap, and I believe he would suck the dirt from Candace's toenails if she so much as hinted at him that he should do so. Their interview is so not serious, Candace didn't put it into her numbering system at all. It would have been episode 83 otherwise. It's just Neil Oliver interview.
Damn.
Yeah. But now we are moving on to episode 83.
All right, guys, happy Tuesday. I am back, and boy, oh boy, I go away for 1 week. Honestly, it was 1 week, and Kamala's team decided they would just do the absolute most. I mean, I'm all the way in Tokyo, getting messages that Kamala is appearing on podcasts, that Kamala has dropped another accent, that Barack Obama is telling black people that they have to vote for her, black men particularly that they have to vote for her, or maybe they're not black, you ain't black, I'm doing that again. Absolutely no one will convince me that this was not a direct response to our series. Because among very many other things, let the history books tell the truth. That Kamala Harris lost the black vote because she put greens in the bathtub. And now, with just 21 days left until the election, she's basically forced to do so much press to try to earn it back. And that's why she's recently announced that she's going to go on to the Breakfast Club, Power 105. I will be watching that. I think it's supposed to be at 5 p.m. We're going to talk about that. But first, we are back with a potentially explosive revelation, an utterly bizarre skeleton that might be in Kamala's closet. Totally bizarre if it's true. I want to be very clear, there is nowhere that Kamala Harris can hide from me. There is no accent that she can throw on that is going to throw me off the scent. So let's just get started. Welcome back to Candace.
Okay, before we get into the material that I wrote up on this, the bathtub greens thing.
Yeah.
She keeps mentioning it. Here's the deal. I didn't cut the clip for it, and it would have been in our last episode. But Kamala had said at some point that she used to make greens, like collard greens or whatever, for, various functions when she was like a lawyer in the attorney's office in fucking California.
Yeah.
And anyway, she claimed that so many people requested her greens that she would rinse them off in the bathtub.
All right.
Yeah. Now, I have known families that have done that. When they're making a whole mess of them, they'll clean the tub first, spick and span like it's a dish, because for a little while it's going to be. And then, you stop the tub up, you soak the greens, and then you rinse them off after as you release the water, you rinse them off to make sure that all the dirt is gone. They've absorbed enough water so that when they go into, when you strip them down, they strip easier. You strip if it's collards, you strip the leaves off the stem, and then you cook them in whatever method you're going to use.
Yeah.
But you've got them all handled. You can handle them right there. It's very easy to do. A bunch of folks on Twitter, after Kamala Harris had said that, a bunch of folks on Twitter gave her a lot of shit for it. Black Twitter kind of went after her for that, and whatever. Like, the fact that it didn't get mentioned anywhere else means it wasn't a big fucking deal.
No. That and if it's people on Twitter, they fucking are... They're already leaning in the direction they're going to go.
Yeah. Like, so, it wasn't that shocking. But yeah, Candace won't let it go. She's like, people clean themselves in tubs. You don't do that in there. It's like, no, idiot. You would, if you're going to do that, you clean the tub from ceiling all the way down.
Yeah.
to make sure that you're doing it in a sterile environment.
Like you would clean your sink if
Yeah.
you were doing
If
a
you're
batch.
if you're doing a batch in the
Yeah.
sink, it's the same. It's the same fucking idea.
Yeah.
Like it's like clearly, Candace, you did not grow up with that being a thing that you would have to do.
Well, no, she grew up in the nice part of town.
Yeah. So, yes, Candace thinks that Kamala Harris gives a damn about her. I am buoyed a little bit anytime I mention this podcast or Candace Owens' name and people don't know who she is. That is such a mental break for me when people were like, when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, like I do a podcast so I have to be up on all this shit. And they're like, oh yeah, who's it about? I'm like, have you ever heard of Candace Owens? No, who's that? Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. I genuinely mean that. Good for you. But then I'll mention, some aspect of her and they go, oh.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't quite click because, her name could be very, very common.
Yeah.
But yeah, they go, oh. And it's never like, it's never a fan sound. Like, oh, why would you, she seems so nice. That interaction has never once occurred.
No.
It's always, oh, that bitch.
Yeah.
What do you... I'm like, she's worse than you think. She's so much worse than you think.
Yeah.
Me and my son have done many hours of episodes. Here's the name of the show, and I'll give it to him. And 9 times out of 10, these people do not know my real name.
Yeah.
So if any of y'all are hearing it, I'm never going to tell you my real name. But... Yeah. So... Anyway, Candace was in Japan for that week, and, she happened to run into Ye there.
Of course.
Yeah, she claims that, like, she didn't know that he was there, and I'm like, y'all are friends, fuck off.
Oh, not
He made it a thing that he was moving to Japan to produce an entire, like, album in his hotel room. I don't care. I wish I didn't know that. I wish I didn't have to know that.
I feel like Ye at this point, and not to shit on DJ Khaled as it be,
Yeah.
I feel like Ye's hit the same, like, off the wall point that DJ Khaled has hit.
Yeah.
Of, like, if he goes, so I'm going to Spain next week
I am
to go record all of my new songs in a bathtub in the middle of a ghetto.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to bat an eye. They're just going to go, all right, Mr. Ye, where are we renting? Okay.
Right.
Can we stay in a hotel?
Yeah.
How many cockroaches exactly do you want in the bathtub?
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, he's just... I'm convinced he's so used to eating his own shit that he just has a hose hooked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like a still suit from Dune.
Oh.
Like a Fremen still suit. That's what I think of when I think of these guys.
The Fremen still suits.
Yeah, if you read Dune, it's impossible to forget about them.
Do they make mention to
Frank Herbert writes so much about the still suits.
As somebody who does a sci-fi themed D&D campaign, I can understand the obsession over particular aspects.
Honestly,
like
you might really like Dune a lot.
Yeah.
It's actually a very good series. At least the books that Herbert wrote.
Yeah.
I'm not going to qualify the ones that his kid wrote. I didn't read any of them.
Fair.
But anyway, here's our next clip.
I still just love my intro music. You know why? Because I just love running into Ye in Tokyo. I'm not even kidding. I just ran smack into him in Tokyo. He's doing great, by the way. He looks great. Tokyo is good for him. It's good for him to be out of Los Angeles. More about that maybe later on this week, because there's clearly so much that we need to get updated on, so much that I missed, and I promise that we're going to get to everything that we possibly can this week. I know Kamala was on the Call Her Daddy podcast. That was quite a pick for her. I know that she also went on the Colbert Show, but we only have so much time in this first episode back, so we have to get to some breaking news immediately. I'm not going to bury this lead. Okay, so like I said, I was in Tokyo. I got some downtime. I decided I was going to just flip through a couple of your emails. You guys are sending me so much information to info@candaceowens.com, and I was wondering if there was going to be anything big. And lo and behold, someone sends me a link to an article written. What are the chances of this? It was written by a Japanese guy. I'm in Japan, and now I'm getting sent an article that's written by some Japanese guy who claims that he knows all about Kamala, all about Kamala's family, particularly all about Kamala's mother, who he said was involved in the MK Ultra program. So first and foremost, stop the presses. Some of you guys are new to this podcast. Some of you guys are not new, and you know that when we began this independent endeavor, I basically said that reading the book Chaos was required reading. It was all about the MK Ultra program. It was all about the Charles Manson murders that actually the CIA was involved in. Like Charles Manson, we were supposed to believe he was this big scary guy who was behind all of these murders in Hollywood, when in reality the CIA had him as he was a Fed. They turned him while he was in prison. Obviously, were allowing him to give out all of this LSD to brainwash these women. I mean, just an incredible story that really makes you confront what your government is capable of. And so when I read this guy and he's saying that her mother was a part of the MK Ultra program, that she was essentially experimenting on monkeys, it kind of made things fit for me in a way, just like it passed the sniff test, because I know, and we're not going to get into it in this episode, that the civil rights movement was not a natural movement. It was a movement that was being done by people that had an interest in changing the dynamics in America. Black Americans were essentially just the tools. Obviously, we know that after the civil rights movement, some of the things that were installed were meant to actually destroy the black community. When you get into LBJ, who was horrifically racist, I mean, so much happened in the 60s, shooting of JFK, that we still don't have answers for, but we kind of know who shot JFK and who was behind the shooting of JFK. Anyways, this guy is saying that her mother was a part of that, and that makes sense to me because we know that Shamala Goplin, just don't know if I'm saying her name right, incredibly intelligent scientist, and yet spent so much time at these protests, just intertwining herself in the civil rights movement. Not the average thing that somebody who's like experimenting on baboons is like, okay, get a free weekend, I want to go down to a protest, unless you're being told to sort of infiltrate and make yourself a part of these protests. So I thought, okay, this is plausible, but also not really relevant, right? Because it's not going to shape the election. You can't exactly blame Kamala for the crimes of her mother. Also, if her mother worked for the government and they told her to experiment on monkeys, okay, what are you going to do? But it was something else that was buried within this article that caught my eye, okay? Now, before I tell you what that was, the first thing that you're thinking is, Candace, how do you know that this Japanese guy wasn't just some crazy person? That's what my husband said. Fair point. Obviously, you get tons of emails, so this could be a total schizophrenic guy who's just putting together a storyline and is writing all crazy. So I said, let me just do a little bit of research into this guy. And there's actually tons of things available about him, and there's actually a video of him speaking about something that has nothing to do with Kamala, so I want to give you guys the opportunity to practice your own discernment. I'm a big believer in believing your own eyes and believing your own ears, right? So I'm going to show you a video of the author of that article. I'm telling you, his name is Yoichi Shimatsu. And here is a video of him. We're just going to show you a clip of him discussing the Japanese Fukushima nuclear disaster. Take a listen.
A new villain enters the arena. Yoichi Shimatsu! So.
That was almost a little racy.
So, I'm not going to play the clip she uses, but I will do a rundown of his article titles from the site he writes for now, which is called Rense.com, RENSE.com. There are literally hundreds of articles written by him alone. And if anyone listening has ever read anything on InfoWars or Newsmax, then you get the basic gist of the writing style. I will say that an overwhelming amount of his articles are fear-mongering about the Fukushima nuclear reactor and fallout from it, and an almost equal amount, and by that I mean a few dozen, are devoted entirely to Pizzagate. But here are some of the other article titles. The Sea of Japan megaquake was caused by nuclear mayhem from holy nuclear reactors. Hunter Biden is Creeper Joe's courier and paid agent of China's One Belt Road fiasco. John F. Kennedy, eternal hero of America and archfoe of Zionist evil, will be vindicated. Israeli army preys on Gaza's premature babies for organs to rich Jews. Fukushima lethal water releases are America's baptism into demon worship. Hunter stashed cocaine for his dad's brain cleansing at Camp David. Why was the Titanic-bound sub destroyed? And that is just a taste of the utter batshit insane stuff he has at his portion of the site. Anyone interested can click on his name to see hundreds of articles. But let's hear Candace's take on him before we continue. And yes?
I just have to say the Fukushima nuclear waters thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe the problem here is he played too much Fallout 4, and he thinks that the children of Adam are just... Sorry, and Fallout 3. They were in Fallout 3 too.
Yeah.
Are the, just base example of Americans. And, their holy baptism and radiation and shit.
Oh God, no, he's on another level.
Oh, he's just batshit insane.
He's so on another level. Yeah. So here's the next clip.
So, what do your eyes and ears tell you about that guy immediately? Not a crazy person, seems highly intelligent. The reason why we do that is because one of the exercises that journalists today take place in is constantly trying to discredit people, calling people crazy, don't pay attention to this person, they're a racist, they're a sexist, they're crazy. You look at this guy, you go, okay, this is a Japanese man, he sounds very intelligent, he's none of those things. It wouldn't make sense for a Japanese guy just to be randomly racist towards an Indian woman. And I can now tell you a little bit about his background. Shimatsu is about as intelligent and as accomplished as he sounds.
No.
He is the former editor of the Japan Times. If you're not familiar with the Japan Times, it is the largest and the oldest English newspaper in Japan. And he received his master's in journalism from Berkeley University. Yes, the old stomping grounds of Kamala's mother and Kamala's father, who he claims to know. He claims to know the mother. He claims to have run the same circles as her. Now, as I was reading his piece, the hatred that he feels for Kamala Harris and her family is palpable. And he offers a reason for that hatred. He claims that it's because he mentored someone named Jeff Adaki, who was involved in San Francisco politics, and indeed he was. Jeff Adaki was mysteriously murdered. This is according to him. You look it up. The story is incredible. He was a lawyer, he was a public defender, and he was also a San Francisco mayoral candidate who died in some unbelievably suspicious circumstances after having made enemies with the San Francisco political establishment. The establishment was after him, making statements against him. He was coming after their pensions. He had amassed a lot of power. People liked him. And one such person, by the way, who was opposed to him and ran a candidate against him was Willie Brown. Yeah, Willie Brown, the one that Kamala, the married man that Kamala had an affair with, that gave her her political comeuppance. And so, yeah, you look into that Jeff Adaki story about how he died, how days before he died, he was saying that the medical examiner was corrupt, and then that medical examiner was the same one who conducted an autopsy on his dead body, and then that autopsy result was reversed. I mean, it is as shady as it gets, just a true California, San Francisco scandal. So this author was the mentor to this man, and he still believes that he was murdered. And I will let you guys decide. We're going to park that aside for a moment because Shimatsu makes another stunning claim right at the top of his piece that caught my attention. I'm going to read it to you verbatim. This is what he wrote in the essay. He wrote, "About a decade ago, I was scanning the society page with a photo of Kamala Harris's marriage to a wealthy Canadian-British businessman. My personal dislike of her, since my sojourn in San Francisco, followed by the mysterious murder of Jeff Adaki, I was something of his mentor to the evil brew of San Francisco Democrat politics, made me want to vomit on seeing her overjoyed smile, arm in arm with a British subject, conferring on her 2 added citizenships, Brit and Canadian, atop of her American passport and maybe even Indian residency papers. She's a worldly woman indeed, and in action. Like so much of her personal record, her marriage to the Canuck has since been scrubbed from the record as if it never happened. That's very convenient for her, run for the presidency. which disallows foreign citizens to hold the highest position in American governance. Oh, yes, did I ever mention that Kamala's a cheater? In more ways than one.
Okay, that was a lot, but that's what we do here. Anyway, let's tackle this. First, Candace thinking it's impossible for anyone of any ethnicity to be racist to anyone else is kind of racist on its own. But, moving on from that, there is no clear indication of when Yoichi Shimatsu went to UC Berkeley. Or even if the one on the UC Berkeley alumni page is him, because there is no photo. No list of accomplishments, just a fucking name. I went poking around to see if I could get info on him that wasn't on rents.com, and I came up empty. So, I don't entirely believe that he went to school there. Anyway, he is not the former editor of the Japan Times. He is a former associate editor and writer for the Japan Times Weekly, which was an offshoot magazine they ran on weekends along with the Japan Times. That operation closed in 2017, when the paper was bought out from debt and people that were seen as dead weight, such as Shimatsu, were let go. Shimatsu did not mentor Jeff Adaki. Adaki was an accomplished and impressive lawyer with the San Francisco Public Defender's Office for 32 years. He passed away from heart failure at the age of 59. He wasn't fucking killed. Yes, there were complications with the medical examiner that were disputed, but the cause of death either way was heart failure. The ME said it was from drugs. The independent examiner said it was from a previously unknown heart condition. Either way, not murder. Moving on, the claim that Kamala Harris was married to an unnamed Canuck is also false. She was in an affair with Willie Brown. That's a known fact that no one disputes. But she has only ever been married to her current husband, Doug Emhoff. The only claim anyone will find to this supposed Canadian marriage is in this piece. It hasn't been scrubbed because it never existed. This dude is just making shit up. Also, Shyamala Gopalin was a breast cancer research doctor, not a MK Ultra scientist working on baboons. Candace will go on to defend him for a couple more minutes, right up to our next point.
Okay, so I'm looking at this guy. He seems to have a pretty good memory. He definitely has a record, which I would say makes him a legitimate person. Like I said, as an editor to the Japan Times, this is not some kooky, crazy person.
Yes, he is.
Now we know that he did, in fact, run the same circles as her, the same circles as potentially her mother.
No.
And he is recalling with tremendous detail a photo of her having married some Canadian-British guy that he says has since been scrubbed from the internet.
No.
My instinct just right away went, I think this man is telling the truth. He has, you can tell, like I said, contempt for her. He can tell as you read his piece that he believes that she is involved, and just like her mother was, in the higher echelons of the government, involved with the feds who are able to sort of disappear these sorts of things.
No.
My instinct just says, Candace, you should look into this. Because, by the way, just even the backstory, the idea that this woman never got married at all until she met Doug Emhoff, who swept her off her feet in 2014 when she was 49 or 50 years old, questionable. But, of course, then you go, why would she hide her marriage? Like, no one really cares if you're previously married anymore. Nobody really holds...
Hold on, I'm just going to pause this right here. Now, dude wrote this MK Ultra thing in 2024.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks ago, I think. And in it, he said, I saw that she married a Canadian in 2014.
Yeah.
Because he said about 10 years ago, which would be, 2014. Candace married her husband, Doug Emhoff, in 2014.
Yeah.
She did not marry some fucking Canadian. But this is going to go further and dumber than it should. And here's more. Oop.
People who are not Christians, I would say, don't really hold the sacrament of marriage. It's not important. People get divorced all the time. Why hide this? Why hide a marriage?
Because it didn't happen.
There would have to be something very big about her spouse that she wouldn't want us to know. Maybe who he is. Maybe, like he suggests, it's because he's not a citizen, or there's something about her citizenship that's a question mark. Like I said, I don't know, but I'm curious. It has my attention. So I decided to actually run her name and see if there was ever, or maybe there's more than one previous marriage. Who knows? I actually never even thought to take this angle, and I decided to look into it to see if I could find any hits on a marriage between Kamala and somebody else. And I did come across something very interesting. Now, I want you to take this with a grain of salt. There could, of course, be another Kamala Devi Harris who resided in California. But we did come across a Kamala Devi Harris who applied for a marriage certificate on April 29th of 1984. So our Kamala would have been 20 years old. I'm going to show you that document. You'll notice that it is blurred. It's intentionally blurred because you have to purchase it, which we have, so you guys don't have to go out and do that. Essentially, you have to purchase it, and then they deliver it electronically within 24 hours. We did that this morning because it was closed yesterday. What it shows us is a marriage between a Kamala D. Harris and a Philip J. Henderson, which took place in Reno, Nevada. What we know from this document thus far is that the Kamala that is listed, Kamala D. Harris, was a resident of California, and that her husband's residence is listed as in Michigan. That is literally all we know, okay? Like I said, there could be a circumstance where there just is another Kamala D. Harris who's living in California and got married. And so what I'm going to do at this point, as we await more information, is to just offer it up to the public. What I want you to do, again, you don't need to purchase this document, but somebody out there knows something. Somebody saved a newspaper clipping. I know grandmas be cutting out newspaper clippings, putting it on. Nobody knows why they're constantly cutting out newspaper clippings and saving it and tacking it along. Somebody will recall exactly what it is that Yoichi is saying he recalls, that she was married to a Canadian. Maybe somebody still has that newspaper clipping. More details. Again, maybe there was a marriage that took place in Canada, and you guys are able to go through the documents in Canada to see that if you can find something. You can just check wherever it is that you live. Like I said, this has caught my interest. I believe there is something there. Like I said, Kamala D. Harris is not the most popular name in the entire world. And I also found something very strange, that when I was looking this up, somebody had intentionally tried to blend, to confuse matters, that Kamala D. Harris with a Kamela, which is spelled with an E, Kamela Harris, who was living and is still alive, lived her entire life in Washington. They intentionally tried to blend the records to confuse it. I thought that was very strange. Like I said, we know nothing yet. We are asking for the public. If you know anything, remember anything, recall anything, if you are Canadian and you recall something, if you're American and you know something or saw something or remember the same thing he remembers, message us, send us an email rather, at info@CandaceOwens.com. In the meantime, we have reached out. We were able to get his email. We have reached out to Yoichi Shimatsu, and we are hopeful that we will hear more. We'll take a brief pause here to remind you guys about Good Ranchers. You know,
Again, not the kind of ad read to roll into off of this.
Well, guess how much the marriage record search is?
Huh?
It's 50 cents. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first time I heard this bullshit, I stopped what I was doing and looked up the year 2014 for this thing. Came up empty, did other year ranges, came up empty, chalked it up as bullshit and move on. On the production writing end, I finally heard her say the year 1984. I looked it up, and that does exist for then, but this isn't the time frame quoted in the piece by Shimatsu. He says it happened in 2014, and he doesn't say where or when. Reno, Nevada is a far cry from San Francisco, or in Canada, but Candace, begging her audience for a scrap of something to go bug their grandmothers and do the work of proving the words of a liar hosted on the same site as a bunch of other liars, Knowledge Fight fans will recognize the following name, David Icke, as being a contributor to Rents.com, and I'll give them a moment to hiss at the sound of his name. Shimatsu is only provable as a consistent liar that is prolific and fortunately only well known to a small audience. Candace will go on to beg for this information from her audience more over the week. I've mentioned it here and we're moving on. Naturally, she has problems with Obama, so let's get into it here. Some of this I would classify as racist. I'm cutting out the first 4 minutes where Candace slowly explains for her audience how Obama had a book deal a few years before he was a senator. That book deal fell through, and it has been the subject of conspiracy theories because the promotional material worked up for it. They said that he was born in Kenya. He wasn't born in Kenya. It was a misprint. But moving on from that, Candace spits out several lies about Barack Obama in succession, and that is where we are picking up.
He never lied about this. He did not grow up in a household with his Kenyan father at all, Barack Obama Sr., whatever. He was raised by his mother, Stanley Dunham, and then she married a person who worked for the Indonesian government as a geographer. She married Lolo Soetoro, and Barry Soetoro was born. He then moved to Indonesia. He went to school in Indonesia, and then he gets sent back to Hawaii at the age of 10. So for the first 10 years of his life, I'm just going, okay, he was not exposed to black people at all. He was exposed to Indonesians, and then he gets sent to Hawaii to get raised by his exceedingly white grandparents. Here's a picture of his grandparents. That's Madeline Dunham and Stanley Dunham, the person whose mother has the name of her father. So then, he is in Hawaii as well. And in case you didn't know this, he was extraordinarily wealthy. You probably could figure that out by all this moving around. That's why while he was in Hawaii, he was enrolled in a private school. He attended the Punahou School, where tuition is for grades K through 12. Tuition is $31,000 per year. That's today, so you can account for inflation, okay? But that's where his grandparents enrolled him, okay? So it's important to note also that in 1970, when Barry Obama got to Hawaii, there were only 5,925 black people in all of Hawaii. Okay? And it's worth noting that 80% of those, north of 80% of those 5,000 black people were in the military. He was not exposed to black people at all, is what I'm trying to make the point. Okay? He had literally not a single part of his upbringing was he around black people. There were no black students at his very expensive private school. Okay, there's no black people in Indonesia. And really, for those of you that haven't been to Hawaii, it's still it has nothing to do with America. It feels like we just took Hawaii and we're like, yeah, you're America. When you go out there, you're like, okay, this is its own thing entirely. They look more Asian than anything else, and they're kind of a little pissed off that we took them, if we're being completely honest about Hawaii now. So he went there. His mother went to a school the same one that his dad went to in Hawaii, the same one that his stepdad went into Hawaii. Really kind of feels like he was a part of some weird military program. And then after that, after going to his $31,000 per year private school in Hawaii, he goes to Occidental College Occidental University or college, whatever it is, in California for 2 years, where he roomed with a white guy for the first year, white guy with blonde hair. He's written about it for his freshman year, and then moved to live off campus in his sophomore year with a Pakistani for 1 year. His dorm mates have described him as doing a mean Mick Jagger impression. Literally, I know I've heard the name Mick Jagger, but I had no idea that he was the lead singer of the Rolling Stones until today. I was today years old when I learned that. I'm just saying, I understand, people grew up in a household that listened to rock and roll. I didn't grow up in that household. MJ was not Mick Jagger for us, it was Michael Jackson. The whole reason we're doing this series is because somebody came for the Jacksons. That's the kind of household I grew up in.
Bullshit.
So then
Candace.
Barry Obama met and dated a woman in his sophomore year. Her name was Alexandra McNear. You might remember she's the one that released the letters that Barry wrote to her where he talked about his homosexual feelings. He says that he makes loves to men in his mind, and so he had homosexual inklings. He then went to Columbia University and still dated Alexandra McNear and was writing her these letters at that time. Anyways, I'm just thinking, what part of Barack Obama's life gave him the authority to tell black men how to act black in America? That's what I'm asking you. What part of his life? Was it Hawaii? Was it Indonesia? Was it Alexandra McNear? At what point did suddenly, Barry Soetoro become the person who gets to tell black men how to act in America? Because that's exactly what he's doing now. That's exactly what he has been doing. It's just because, once you do a photo op with Jay-Z or Diddy, suddenly, you're just, handed an award and gone, okay, now you're black. Now everybody in the black community has to listen to you. Because that's what it seems like. His history and his background is equally as shady as Kamala Harris is, if we are being frank. And they're bringing him out to essentially whip black Americans into shape because, oh, they gave him the black card. So now black people better just listen to Barack Obama. So here he is, suddenly lamenting the fact that black men just aren't energetic enough for Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
Yeah, first off, Barack Obama did not grow up wealthy. So, one lie at a time. First, Barack moved to Indonesia with his mother and his stepfather when he was 6. And he left to go back to Hawaii when he was 10 years old. The private school he attended in Hawaii was not a mark of family wealth. He was granted a scholarship due to family connections. His grandparents lived in an apartment nearby. The bit about his time at Occidental College and writing letters to his girlfriend at the time is true. He was bi-curious. No one disputes that. What I take issue with is her assessment that he isn't black enough to speak to black men at a conference. I'm pretty sure he, looking as he does, experienced life as a black man. I'm not going to play the clip she has because it's poor audio and it doesn't matter. Candace is doing all of this to throw attention off of the Trump and Vance shit show. But she keeps managing to be racist and lying anyway. Such as what she said about Hawaiians, looking like Asians. Like, lady, if you say that in Hawaii, you're going to get slapped.
Maybe thrown into a volcano.
Yeah, or maybe fed to tuna. Like,
oh yeah, forget the tuna's
they're big. They're ridiculously big fish there. Yeah. But anyway, after the clip.
I'm sorry, Barry Toro, but you are going to have to sit your ass down. I got to tell him right now. That's it. Barry has to sit his ass down. This is like, she understands the struggle no more than you understand the struggle. Both of you, okay? How does this work? Again, Barack Obama was raised by 3 extraordinarily wealthy white adults. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that he is not genetically black. He has been honest with the fact that he didn't know his dad, okay? His dad died, I think, when he was in college at some point. He never was raised by him, was never raised around black people ever. That's fine.
No.
But why are you speaking to the brothers? Like, when did it become the brothers? What is this? How do 3 white people raise a strong black brother? I want to know. Is it like grandma and granddad Dunham raised him to be a strong black man, just like Kamala's Indian mother raised her to be a strong Indian woman or something? Like, what's actually happening right now? This is so insulting. And I am the most insulted by this, by the way, because I have dealt with years, the black community telling me that I'm not black because I voted for Trump. Like, you're not black because you're a Republican. Why? Because I see through this stupid BS, this dumb game of thinking you can whip black Americans with some hip-hop music, with Megan Thee Stallion twerking on stage, with Jay-Z and Beyonce marching at a BLM protest, and suddenly, King, Queen, LeBron James sending out a tweet. Like, that's literally supposed to motivate me to vote, because I can see through the BS. I look up these people's background. I'm going, what about you is culturally black? Barack Obama is not culturally black. I'm sorry. It's time for us to accept that. Like I said, I was moved by him too in 2008. I thought, oh, okay, like I really didn't understand his background, and I questioned people who questioned him. But we have to just come to terms with the fact that we have been being played by Democrats for a very long time. And the reality is he is just as shady in terms of his background as Kamala Harris. I am a firm believer that they are breeding politicians. His background is almost too similar to Kamala Harris's in terms of literally no relation to the black community, having so much wealth, and then as if they went through a school of what it is exactly that they should say to relate to the brothers. To relate to the brothers, to relate to the sisters. Oh, a little bit of Cardi B. I can't, okay? I'm sorry. I'm done with this. And I am actually very happy that black men seem to be taking a larger leap away from this. I hope that black women will follow suit and recognize this, to see how ridiculous it is that a woman who is saying she's washing greens in a bathtub and a guy who's suddenly calling black people brothers, despite having literally no introduction to what it means to be culturally a black person in America. I hope that we all can become awakened. But I'm very grateful that black men seem to be holding the line. Like, I am with that 100%. All right, guys, brief break here to remind you about American financing, because today's economic environment.
Okay, that one.
Yeah, that was a hard right turn.
Yeah. Also. I'm fairly certain that the man that was ridiculed for being the first black president of the United States understands.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like, I mean, it's not like growing up in a white household changed his skin tone at all.
No.
When he went outside that house, he was not, he was not necessarily seen as somebody's son or possible little brother or anything like that. He was seen the way that anyone with dark skin is, which is not always good.
Yeah.
He had to be like, when I've known kids that grew up in similar circumstances to him. Well, not kids, adults now, but I mean, and Key and Peele really kind of said it best.
Yeah.
You got to be both the blackest person in the room and the whitest person in the room.
Yeah.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
No.
And...
Because what was it again? It was when they were commenting on the fact that they were both, half
mixed,
white and half black.
Yeah, they're both mixed guys, yeah.
They were sitting there and they're like, yeah, one moment you walking past your brothers in the hood and you're like, hey man, and you're just the blackest guy there, and then the next minute you see a cop writing somebody a ticket and you're like, hello officer, how you doing today?
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure he had a pretty good idea of how things were.
Yeah.
And yeah, he didn't grow up wealthy, so he was around normal people quite a bit.
Yeah.
But
he actually had Key and Peele come into the White House.
That's true, yeah.
They had talked about that on their show.
Yeah. But, neither Barack nor Kamala grew up wealthy, but Candace would never say so. In an earlier show, she mentioned that Kamala and Maya Harris were enrolled in ballet classes when their mother moved them to Canada for about 6 years. During that time, Kamala was 12 to 18 years old. Candace has said previously that her mother, Shamala Gopalin, must have been rich, because Candace currently has a child in ballet and it's very expensive, according to her. I would have included that in the last episode, but it seemed immaterial at the time. Anyway, at that time, I looked up the ballet schools near Candace that would have admitted her kid in question, and I came up with options, and none of them were particularly expensive. Matthew's siblings were in dance classes when he was a baby, and they were more expensive than what Candace pays for her kid. Mm-hmm. So whatever. Neither Barack nor Kamala grew up wealthy. Candace pushing this shit plus her basic racism takes against black Democrats, mixed with her conspiracy bullshit that such people are being created and groomed, that shit is dangerous on levels that she cannot conceive of. She keeps going on this, and I'm not playing more of it, as she uses it to move into her Kamala family garbage. We have more to cover, moving on to episode 84.
All right, guys, we're getting closer. I am convinced that we are going to be the October surprise, because I am telling you things are developing on the Kamala front in a very big way. And I want to say this, I feel it in my soul, in my spirit, that this woman is an operative, that she was selected and that she was groomed by government agencies. I'm comfortable saying that publicly. I hope Kamala comes out and sues me, because that would afford us discovery so we can get answers to many questions that we have. She would have to prove that what I was saying was untrue, thanks to strong defamation laws. I've been receiving, by the way, as of late, a ton of emails about Tim Walz as well. Kamala's VP pick, a suspicious VP pick, because who exactly picked him? Absolutely no one out there thinks that it was Kamala herself. I said, yeah, give me the governor of Minnesota, huh? Who is he? What do they have on Tim Walz? If anything, today we're going to take a brief look into some of the rumors that have been circulating about him. So let's immediately get started. Welcome back to Candace.
Yep, she did it. She went after Walz. But she doesn't start there. Candace bloviates for several minutes about the CIA and MKUltra again, to point to the article about Kamala's mom being an agent and the supposed marriage from 2014. Candace proceeds to fuck up the story she just said one day ago on her show with some added bullshit on top.
And there is just something about this man, this journalist, Yoichi, coming out and saying that Kamala Harris's mother was a part of this program that just makes perfect sense. Claiming that Kamala Harris, in that same piece, was previously married to a British Canadian guy and basically used her connections within the deep state to virtually delete this from the record in preparation for this run.
No.
That just passes the sniff test for me. We did our due diligence on that very quickly, and we came across what we were clear was a potential record between a Kamala D. Harris and a Philip D. Henderson that we found in Reno. Now, we were supposed to receive that record today from the recorder's office. It said 24 hours after we paid for it. We still have not yet received it. That's why we're running a bit late. We just kept refreshing. It's been more than 24 hours. However, we do feel that we can safely debunk this one because upon further digging, we found a different Kamala D. Harris that has a different middle name, and I think that is the one that married Philip D. Harris. So if you've been sending us information on that, please refocus your attention, refocus your research on trying to find a record of the marriage, which may exist. We don't know if the person's name is Philip. We're trying to find a previous marriage of Kamala, which existed in maybe the UK or in Canada. He says that it was in the society page in Canada. Somebody is collecting newspapers. I've had some
He never said
emails
where
of
it
people
was.
that say that they recall this. They don't have it. We need more than that, and we are still awaiting a response from Yoichi. I feel in my gut he is going to respond, that he will get around to it. Even though I believe he currently lives in Hong Kong, we were able to get his actual email. But
It's
there's
on the
something else
website.
here that I would like to say regarding Donald Harris, Kamala's father. I also feel certain that Donald Harris is completely lying about his identity. Due to the communication that we are having right now in the background with people who would know this as a fact.
No such record exists because she has gotten it wrong time and again here. She just fucked up the supposed man's name several times. The marriage supposedly took place in 2014, not 1984, as she has asserted. And this bullshit about people saying they recalled a marriage announcement between two people they wouldn't have had any reason to know about, but they can't find the evidence even though they're going through old newspapers and shit. I mean, come on. I don't doubt that people are photoshopping shit in the hopes of getting a smooth stack of cash. This is all stupid. I'm not going to engage with it anymore this week. As for the stuff I cut off on her talking about Donald Harris, she claims to be talking with relatives and friends of his and of the family in the background, and again, no proof of the claims these people have is being produced. It's all bullshit. Like, I grew up near a Navy base that was inland, outside of Jacksonville, Florida. We saw a lot of weird shit around the base. I don't talk a lot about it because I don't know what they were doing. I didn't know anyone stationed there. I did have a delivery job that took me onto the base on a nightly basis for about a year, and I drove all around the place, usually followed by a Navy cop as I made my rounds. I never saw anything I would have expected to see as a child of the 90s that saw weird shit as a neighbor to the place. It was pretty fucking boring on site. My neighbors had fantastic tales. And similarly, they didn't know anyone stationed there either. So if you were to call any of them today, they'd probably regale you with utter bullshit based on suppositions they cooked up while they passed a joint, did acid, consumed shroom tea, or just told campfire stories. It's all bullshit.
Or OD'd on cult vitamins.
Yeah, that too. Moving on past this, Candace does drop some interesting shit from her childhood. She talks about living with her grandma.
And grew up on the islands, and like that her grandma is black. I would be first and foremost livid because of how close I was to my grandma. Okay, like raised in her house during my formative years. My grandmother is Caribbean. Like I would be in 5 seconds out there being like, who are you to tell me that my grandmother is not black, to tell me that my grandmother did not grow up on the islands, to tell me that my grandmother didn't have a thick Caribbean accent. And first and foremost, I used to correct my grandma. She'd say, throw it away. Throw it away. I say, Grandma, it's throw. It's throw, Grandma. Throw it away. No, Grandma, it's throw, Grandma. When I was a little kid, she'd be like, out the light. I'd be like, Grandma, we don't say out the light. It's turn the lights off, Grandma. There's just no way that I would just be mum. Only just one picture of her in a book, and then like, I'm not even going to answer any questions about my heritage. Something is wrong. We all feel it. She is lying about her genealogy. The person that I'm in communication with, like I said, we're collaborating right now, who is being very forthcoming with information, told me that in Jamaica there was this huge importation of a lot of Chinese and Jewish communists,
No.
or rather, people who purported that they were fleeing communism, who then settled in Jamaica, is what I should say, right? So they get there in Jamaica, and I find that to be of great interest to me because America dealt with a similar influx of a bunch of immigrants who purported to be fleeing communism in Russia, who didn't actually flee communism. They brought it to America. Hence McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, he was a hero. He was telling the truth.
Candace was kind of rude to her grandma. If this is at all true.
I was gonna say, if her grandmother's as old Caribbean as having a thick accent is saying "troit,"
Yeah.
that's the kind of grandmother that either A, already has a switch ready, or B, is the kind to go find me a long stick, bring it back. Now drop drawer, and
That or
switch it.
Or she just, would be like, let me touch your face, child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me touch. Come here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's not the kind of grandmother that you back talk like that to without getting some form of mark on you.
Yeah. Candace was kind of rude if all this is true. I suspect it is because of how she is now. Anyway, there's no evidence to suggest that Jamaica was flooded with Russians or Chinese or Jews fleeing communism. That also didn't happen in America, and I'm glad McCarthy died a long time ago. May he continue to rest in piss. Moving on, remember that Candace grew up in her grandparents' home, which she just said.
You learned that wrong in your history books. Communists are very good at assuming different identities. They are gypsies, and I remain extremely bothered by the fact that Kamala just didn't mention the fact that she had all these white relatives that she was extremely close to anywhere. She just rinsed it completely from her background and her history. I find that to be a severe lie by omission. Here's the thing. I know we're not supposed to go down in conspiracy land. I just live there permanently because I think conspiracy land is gut land, and we are just all coming to terms with the fact that something is wrong. There is too much synergy between what is happening in France, Emmanuel Macron, his shady background, his wife, who's definitively born a man, okay?
No.
Him also being raised by his grandparents, shady,
No.
broken family structure, didn't really know his parents growing up,
No.
but his grandma was there and raised. It's all so related. The Barack Obama story follows the Emmanuel Macron story, follows the Kamala Harris story. How are they all growing up with such a similar non-existence?
No.
Just a non-existence, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense that this many people who are being put into positions of power have such shady upbringings. It's not that difficult to say, this is my mom and this is my dad, and they raised me in some capacity. Also, remember yesterday when I said that there was virtually no information? They tried to wipe the information that Barack Obama lived for like 8 to 10 years, first 10 years of his life in Indonesia. And then
No.
like that one reporter found the one pamphlet that showed that he went by Barry Soetoro. And he also went by Barry Soetoro in college. His name was Barry Soetoro. And there was very little information available about Lolo Soetoro, very few pictures available about Lolo Soetoro, his stepdad. Well, I didn't realize that Judge Joe Brown, man, that judge is coming with the receipts, actually sat down in an interview with Scoon TV and called out Lolo Soetoro. He claims that he was a CIA operative. Take a listen.
Fuck me, I have to listen to these two idiots. But first, we're not going to listen to Joe Brown's bullshit. Today. But as I write this, I am aware that Candace just posted a 2.5-hour interview with Joe Brown. So fuck me, I'll do what I can with it. But Barack Obama only lived in Indonesia for 4 years, from the age of 6 to the age of 10. Emmanuel Macron was not raised by his grandma, and Kamala met hers on her trips to Jamaica in the summers out of school. Candace, however, lived in a house with her grandparents, siblings, and her father, and her grandparents exercised a ton of control over her life until she moved out away from them after high school. making up shit about world leaders and their grandparents and saying they were raised by them or they had outsized influence in their lives as being some sort of bad thing is telling on her own feelings quite a bit. And I feel a therapist could unpack it better. Anyway, after Joe Brown says a bunch of bullshit about Lolo Soetoro, Barack Obama's stepdad, he says that the man worked for Bush Sr. and the CIA and hung around W, and all of it is bullshit. We move on, and the next section is long. I'm playing it because it needs to be seen exactly how far Candace will go to throw people off of Trump's bullshit going on, and how far she is willing to lie. I hope she and everyone else involved gets legally handled with what I am about to play. This is 10 minutes long. I considered cutting it, but I want it to be heard in all its ugly glory. It's the last clip of the show, as the next episode is entirely skippable. This really does deserve our time. I will pause it at sections to discuss whatever we need to discuss. Anyway, here it is, 10 minutes in hell.
All right, let's talk about this mysterious case of Kamala's running partner, Tim Walz. Now, so many of you guys have emailed us, why aren't you covering this budding story? Why aren't you speaking about this? And the answer is because the allegations are severe. We want to be cautious because there is also a chance that it's a trap. That's a perfectly laid trap that's being laid for us just ahead of the election. So they can go, oh, look, it's QAnon people, and they said this, and there was no truth to this. And you just have to be careful this close to an election. You want to make sure that anything that you're reporting on is fact-based or at least has legs to it. So you can go,
That hasn't stopped you so far.
okay, we're not certain for sure. And regarding Tim Walz, parking aside any allegations, I do want to say this. He just gives me the heebie-jeebies. You guys know everybody knows what the heebie-jeebies are. Women, we know what the heebie-jeebies are. Okay, it's a spiritual condition that women have. You can't explain it. You come across someone, you just go, Don't trust it. And there's no words, you don't know, but you know. Look at somebody just I don't have any facts, but I know. Just no. I don't know, but I know. That's the heebie-jeebies. That's how the heebie-jeebies work. It's just a thing, a vibe that goes around. What we do know for certain regarding Tim Walz.
This comes from a woman that has a bunch of men around her that are known and accused rapists.
Also, I thought that we were going to refer that to as the spirit sense within us. Has she already forgotten her own fucking lingo, guys?
She has, yeah. Yeah, she doesn't.
That he has a loose relationship, I would say, with the truth. I mean, it was back in a radio interview in 2019. He claimed that he was in Hong Kong on the day of the Tiananmen Square massacre. He wasn't. And they said, oopsie, I got my timeline mixed up. Really? I feel like that's not something you forget. I was there 9/11 at the World Trade Center. Oh, actually, I was a little confused. I was a couple of weeks later, and I was actually not even in New York. Huh?
Funny story about Candace. Her and her husband were in Washington, D.C. 3 days after January 6th.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Then there was the Harris campaign circulating a clip on X where he was speaking about gun violence, and he said, we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at. And he heavily suggested that he was therefore in a combat zone, weapons I carried in war. And it turned out that that just wasn't true. According to the Nebraska Army National Guard, he enlisted in April of 1981, just 2 days after his 17th birthday, and he entered service as an infantryman, completing a 12-week Army infantry basic training course before graduating from high school. In 1996, he transferred to the Minnesota Army National Guard. In 2003, he was deployed to Italy, which was just a support position of the active military forces. He was never
Most military positions are support.
actually put in the combat zone himself.
Now, that is true.
All right, let's talk
That
about
much
this
is true. And
mysterious case. Men went from nowhere. I think it's fine. Red-blooded conservatives will not.
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a man,
Right.
and we're supposed to believe he's
I
some
skipped through
war
that.
vet, and he's gonna go shoot some pheasant, and unfortunately, just couldn't load a shotgun. I mean, take a look at this. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
That's my theory, and it never fits quite right. Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
I think that was it was supposed to be designed as some press that was going to bring Republican voters to him, and it did the exact opposite. Let me tell you, the red-blooded conservatives will not be voting for him based on that clip of him being completely unable to load a shotgun despite...
He was unloading the shotgun. And she would know that if she had bothered to actually read the fucking articles from the reporters that were standing there with him.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. They loaded the shotgun. They went out. It was obviously a photo op. They went out with these reporters. He said there was they said there was 20 reporters plus all of his Secret Service detail.
Yeah.
Well, when you've got that many people...
Nothing's going to be around to shoot.
No, nothing's going to be around to shoot because you've got that many people. All the game is scared.
Yeah.
It's flown away. It's whatever. So he decided to call the hunt early on, and he was trying to unload the shotgun. That's what was going on. He was trying to unload it because he wanted to be able to at least sling it over his shoulder safely.
Yeah.
Because he's what the alt-right doesn't recognize. He's a responsible gun owner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. He's not out to accidentally hit either A, one of his Secret Service guys, B, himself, or C, any of the reporters.
Yeah. So, moving on.
Not being in a combat zone. Anyways, the allegations that most people have been reluctant to cover. There's no big conspiracy going on here. We're just waiting for more proof. They are, of course, way more serious than whether or not he was in a combat zone. Look, here's the thing that I'll say. Stereotypes.
Yes.
The other thing about that,
yeah.
If he, as she said, and as you said, he completed his army training.
Yeah.
Which means he knows how to load at least a few different types of weapons.
Yeah.
Load and unload.
Yeah. He was in the Army National Guard for 23 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, to stay in that, as having had a friend that was in, I want to say it was the Colorado National Guard.
Yeah.
You have to keep yourself in tip-top shape.
Mm-hmm.
In everything.
Yeah.
You have to keep your IQ up, you gotta keep your physique up, you gotta keep your weapons handling up.
Yeah,
It's not something that you can slouch on. That friend knows that because when COVID happened, he let himself go a bit because they let up on their restrictions and then they went,
right.
Hey guys, now that there's a vaccine for all of you, we need you to come in back for your physicals again. Hope you've been keeping up with it.
Yeah.
And he failed his physical. He went back to the gym and he was like, you know what? I have the IQ to go into the IT department.
Yeah.
I'm going to go into IT.
Yeah. I mean, let's continue.
I like them. I believe in them. I don't believe stereotypes come from nowhere. I think it's fine for us to admit, hey, if you had to pick, the greatest driver in America, you wouldn't be give me the Asian woman, right? I think that's fair. I think it's fair. There are Asian stereotypes, black people stereotypes. If you're hey, I really want to get my accounting done, taxes done, you're not going to be give me the female black girl. I don't know. Of course, I'm not saying you can't be, brilliant. My sister's an accountant, and she's really good at math. But I'm saying if you just had to quickly pick someone in a room based on stereotypes, you're okay. And there are straight man stereotypes and there's homosexual man stereotypes. And I would just say as a straight man stereotype off the bat, I don't think that straight men, when they are employed at schools, start clubs for homosexuals. I just don't think that that's something that happens. And Tim Walz did that, and the NPR kind of came out with this story and really tried to sell it to Americans by writing about a guy named Jacob Raton who apparently was one of the students at the school that Tim Walz went through. I'm going to just read this to you directly. Taunts and threats escalated as rumors about Jacob Raton's sexual orientation swirled around his southern Minnesota high school during his senior year in 1999. Right there, I was kind of really? In the 90s, taunts and threats for being gay, it's given...
Yes, that is something that.
All right, let's talk about this
happened.
mysterious whatever. Let's just take this at face value. It found his southern Minnesota high school during his senior year in 1999.
Yes. That is something that happened. It happens today. Gay, trans, anyone who isn't heteronormative gets bullied.
Yeah.
It happened a lot in the 90s. Just because it didn't happen where Candace was, or so she says,
Mm-hmm.
it fucking happens.
Also,
Yeah.
for somebody who was, bullied in high school for being a black woman,
Yeah.
I'm more than sure she's witnessed
Yeah.
a homosexual get bullied.
Yeah. Like, especially, and she was in school later.
Yeah.
She was in school later than that. So,
Fuck.
yeah. Like,
I've witnessed that happen. Like, the one friend that I have that's still in Catholic school
yeah.
has to keep the fact that he's gay to himself, because if he comes out, he's going to get bullied and ridiculed out of that Catholic school.
Yeah.
He watched it happen to a group of kids that were all like, you know what? Fuck the system. We're gay.
Yeah.
And so they came out, and it was a thing at the school.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, all of their parents pulled them out of the school because they all got bullied relentlessly.
Yeah.
It still happens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely does.
Like, right there, I was kind of like, really? Like in the 90s, like taunts and threats for being gay. It's giving the Laramie Project vibes, which is like, we're not being told the truth. Whatever. Let's just take this at face value. It goes on to say someone chalked a slur on his driveway in giant letters. Like, was I living in a different 1990 existence? Like, I feel like everybody in the 90s just like got along. Like, nobody was writing like gay slurs on someone's
yes, they
driveway
were.
in chalk, but whatever sells
Yes, they fucking
papers,
were.
I guess. His mother recalled being horrified by anonymous mail that arrived at their house. Like, people were just this obsessed with the idea that someone might be gay in 1999. They were just like chalking up his driveway. After the teenager found his car window smashed in the high school parking lot, this feels like a movie, he told officials at Mankato West High School that he intended to come out of the closet and sought their support to start a gay-straight alliance club. The principal made an unconventional decision in the choice of a faculty advisor for the club, which the high school had never had before in this relatively conservative city. Tim Walls, a geography teacher who was also a football coach, Mr. Walls readily agreed, and the choice came as a relief to Mr. Rattan. So he was selected and agreed that he would help start this club with a kid who apparently, for whatever reason, people were chalking his driveway and smashing in his car because he might be gay. I don't know, doesn't pass the vibe check, but that's what they're saying is true. Okay, so there has been a person who is deeming themselves to be a whistleblower who has been going around to various people. It made its way to me as well, claiming that he was claiming that he's a student that was essentially groomed by Tim Walls and that he will be taking further action. He's been, and again, this could be a person who's just in the mix saying stuff, claiming that he was in some way abused by Tim Walls. And I think it's worth discussing because the rumor mill has gotten big enough. Again, I don't have any concrete proof. For me personally, I would need a person's name to verify that they actually lived to and went to the same school. He claims that he's going to be forthcoming with that. I do a lot of work with Ian Carroll. He is the TikToker, and he went to suss this out like even more. Like he went to fish out the details of this even more by contacting the whistleblower and had a 42-minute discussion with him on the phone, which he felt that the person who came forward was being entirely legitimate, as well as others in the movement who felt that he was being legitimate. But people can be great performers. Anyways, I will allow you to listen to what Ian Carroll concluded after his phone call with the alleged whistleblower. Take a listen.
Today, I had a 40-minute phone call with what sounded an awful lot like a genuine whistleblower. This is the phone call. There was no weird, breaks in character. There was no weird, the vibe I can be fooled. I'm no ultimate judge of character. I'm not perfect. I'm also not some professional journalist or anything. But my judgment of what I heard and what I asked and what was said to me it sounded like it was a real story, and the details seemed to line up not only with what else had been said, but also with what I could corroborate about like where Tim Walz was at that time and what he was doing at that time, and who knows. And so basically,
Publicly available
here's where
information.
we're at. Whistleblower is seeking a legal course of action.
No, he
I'm not
isn't.
going to say more about that, but allegedly told me that they are not seeking any kind of payout, that they're seeking only
Bullshit.
reimbursement for court fees.
Bullshit.
And basically peace of mind to not have to see
Bullshit.
Tim Walz on screen on
Bullshit.
video in the White House for 4 years. And Whistleblower knows of several other people that experienced the same.
As the vice president, Tim Walz would barely be in the White House.
Yeah.
These people's basic like, the VP doesn't live in the fucking White House.
No.
They have their own separate residence. Okay, there's one more minute of this.
Or similar types of abuse. Whistleblower says they have lots of proof. Allegedly, there is a cache of journals and like letters, like just documents from the time that help corroborate the story. And they're allegedly stashed where multiple of these people have access to them. And
Bullshit.
allegedly, they feel comfortable sending photos of some of those documents that won't give away their identity yet, but will at least help to corroborate the story, allegedly.
Bullshit.
Allegedly, there's also more actions being taken behind the scenes that I'm not going to talk about right now.
You don't have to keep
All
saying
I'm gonna say
allegedly.
is that it could all be fake. There's no proof of anything yet, and you should treat it as such. Unconfirmed, uncorroborated internet claims. But there might be something there.
So look, we need concrete evidence in my view, and that's why I'm not going to show the letter that the whistleblower wrote to the public about what happened. Now, he is describing specific body parts with tattoos. Like I said, he could just be an incredible performer, so we should just be very fair, because with all matters...
Yeah, okay, then why the fuck bring it up at all?
Yeah.
You know? Why the fuck bring it up at all if you have to be so careful? And
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. They know it's bullshit. They know it's fucking bullshit, and they're doing this to fuck with Walz. And they can go fuck right off a fucking ledge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that thing pissed me the fuck off.
Yeah.
To the point that I don't care now if this show ever pays for itself. I don't give a flying shit. I want her done, and I just want to ruin every bit of income she has. With the exception of being married to the idiot that married her. In that case, I hope he made her sign a prenup.
What's prenup?
Prenuptial agreement. If they break up, she can't get shit.
Being a now Catholic, I hope he did.
Right. Yeah, right.
Also,
God.
the something that keeps ticking in my head,
Yeah.
and it's probably only because I've had Catholics and Christians both go, is she goes, you know, the whole thing about becoming a Catholic is you learn a lot about Christianity, and it's like, no, you learn a lot about Catholicism.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn a lot about being
A Catholic?
a Catholic Christian. Yeah. Yeah, well, anyway. That is all for this week, folks. Now we're going to drink something stupid. I've chosen for this week one of my favorite locally made drinks that I have enjoyed immensely, and Matthew has not had yet. It is Minnesota-made Northern Soda Company Craft Soda Sunday Purple, an authentically Minnesota grape soda pop made with cane sugar. It is 160 calories per can, but we're splitting it up, so that's 80. The ingredients, first off, this is brewed in New Brighton, Minnesota. I haven't been there yet. Ingredients: filtered carbonated water, cane sugar, natural and artificial flavor, red 40, blue 1, citric acid, sodium benzoate as a preservative. All the good stuff.
Yep.
It only comes in cans, so
Well, that was
crisp.
actually pretty good.
it was crisp. God, it smells good. Now, for the record, I despise grape soda. I tried this on a whim, and I'm so glad that I did.
Oh, which they got a cranberry lime flavor
I've seen
out,
that, yeah.
for the holiday season. Because it's I don't remember if it was a thing down in Florida or not,
Yeah.
but at least up here in the northern states, it's a big thing for everything to be fucking cranberry flavored.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that.
Which I gotta say, I'd rather see everything cranberry and fucking Honeycrisp apple flavored than fucking pumpkin pie spice. We still have pumpkin pie
there's
spice.
a ton of that. Yeah, no, that's
But at least there's a different
I-
variant I can enjoy.
man, pumpkin pie spice is a whole ass industry I don't even want to touch or talk about right now.
And fuck, this is
It smells
this
right.
is grapey.
Yeah, it's very grapey. It's good shit. Let's go for it. Oh. Yeah.
I think the thing that gets me about most grape sodas
Yeah.
is how somehow it's still just as dry as eating a grape. Which I can never figure out because they're a fucking ball with juice on the inside.
It's the skin.
I can't. It's skin.
Yeah. It's the skin, yeah. Like if you actually go through the somewhat painstaking effort of like getting grape skins off the grapes and just like eating with a spoon or whatever, then it's like pure jelly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in
Yeah.
all, though, that is.
It's an exceptional grape soda.
Oh yeah. Out of all the ones I've tried, that's probably the best.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got 3 other cans of it, so lucky me.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, is there anything you want to add to this before we say sayonara for the next 2 weeks? Aside from vote Harris, Walls, please.
Yeah.
I'm look. My political views are obviously very nakedly put forth on this show, but yeah, no, we do not need Project 25 in the fucking White House because it's been said a lot over the last couple weeks as Trump has been on a sharp mental decline. But the general consensus is that they would get him in there, let him get shit started, and then Vance would pull the 25th Amendment to remove him from office and seat himself in there as a dictator.
Yeah.
As a very young dictator.
I mean, it kind of rounds itself out with the 25, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Vance would put himself in there as president number 48.
Mm-hmm.
And he would do all the things because so much of Project 25 can be traced right back to Vance.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we don't need that. No one needs that shit.
Mm-mm.
But okay. I think that's all I have. What do you got?
Well, I guess on a lighter note, if any of you folks play any of the Warhammer video games, Space Marine 2 just came out with a free update for another mission. So it's quite fun. You fight a Bio-Titan, which is great. If you understand Warhammer, you understand what I just said.
Yeah, I fully don't, and I don't need to jump into more lore of a thing that I don't understand.
Just
I have enough.
It's the worst crusading end of the Catholic Church. Is the best way I can put it. It's basically as we've come to find out what Neo-Catholicism is, which is quite saddening to me because it's all about fucking serving the God Emperor, which is basically a warring Jesus, which is funny because the God Emperor never wanted to be a god.
Yeah.
He kept telling everybody, "Look, I despise."
Listen.
So
listen.
Yeah.
All that I need to know about Warhammer 40k, I learned through Penny Arcade.
Oh yeah.
That's the entire dip that I'm going to do into that. You, however, would probably have a hell of a time with two of the people from It Could Happen Here, namely Robert Evans, who's a Warhammer 40K nerd,
Yeah.
and Garrison Davis.
Okay.
Yeah. They are all about that shit.
Yeah.
I skip those sections. When they start going Warhammer, I'm like, nope. Skip 30 seconds. Still, nope. I treat it like commercials. Like, nope. I'm going to get past this. Okay, there's the meat. Yeah.
I still think one of my favorite interviews with the fucking Superman
Yeah.
from Witcher.
Oh, Henry Cavill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah. I still love that interview with him of going, after this, all right.
Yeah. Ooh, excuse me. Goodness. Sunday purple burps. Ooh, Sunday purple.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
that sounds
No,
bad. That sounds like
no.
a torture practice. Yeah, give him the Sunday purples, Morty.
Oh.
Do it. All right, that's enough for this stretch.
Yep.
I hope to see y'all on the other side. We're going to keep doing this regardless of what the election results are. I think honestly that Candace and her ilk don't want Trump in office
Yeah.
because they need someone to yell about.
Well, not to mention that, but also, if things kick off as everybody's predicted of, Vance is the eventuality.
Yeah.
They really don't want that because, that's gonna gonna put a lynch on them.
It's another reason I don't think any of them are voters.
No.
Yeah. All right, that's enough for us. Have a good next 2 weeks, and hopefully everything goes well for everybody.
Yeah. Y'all have a good 2 weeks.
Bye.
Ciao.